Good morning, everyone. It might also be good afternoon. Welcome to the Philippine College of Swine Practitioners 25th Pinoy Pork Challenge, Swine Industry Back on Track. I am Dr. Ninette Alvis, a diplomate of PCSP, and I will be your moderator for today. From our first day of discussion on where we are, the current state and actions being taken to address ASF or African swine fever, we have enlightening discussion presented by Dr. Michael Tan, which had set the tone in our lead lecture with his topic, One Health Plus. Yesterday, on our second day, we navigated through and overcoming the challenges in our farm operations where strategies and protocols on farm in the gestation or mating and piglet management, also in-feed supplementations and using diagnostics as integral part of our day-to-day farm operations. Today, on our third and last day, we will be discussing our readiness for the next with strategies to ensure preparedness of our farms, our people, and our production management. I am honored to host today's event where we will present the first ever Dr. Jose Q. Molina Memorial Lecture. Please watch this.
Hello everyone, I am Michael Del Rosario. I'm the swine brand manager of Elanco Philippines. Elanco is proud to sponsor the first Dr. Jose Q. Molina Memorial Lecture, and we have invited our distinguished speaker, Dr. Raymond Q. Xiangyang, to lead this afternoon session. Dr. Q is a general manager and chief consultant of Nanjing Dr. Vet Health Management Company Limited, a consulting firm based in China with vast experience in large swine farms, especially in ASF recovery efforts. He is here with us to talk about a topic on optimization of health management strategies of large-scale pig herds under ASF background. Dr. Q is a graduate of Doctor of Veterinary Medicine and has a master's degree in preventive veterinary medicine from Nanjing Agricultural University. He has experience in large swine production systems as technical director in Huanshan and Han Swine Food Group, as CEO and technical manager in Asia for an international breeding company. He has presented in international events such as Liman China, IPVS, and APVS. He has published more than 60 articles in pig production, health management, and breeding with 3 pending invention patents. Without further ado, let us all welcome Dr. Raymond Q.
Hello, everyone. My name is Xu Xiangyang. It's my honor to accept the invitation of Elanco to give the presentation. My topic is optimization of health management strategy of large-scale pig herds under ASFA background in China. My presentation includes the following content. The first is the influence and knowledge about the ASFA in China. The first cases in China is in August 2018. At the beginning, the pig farmers is panic, nervous, and the depopulated pigs at the worst stage of infection. So the huge economic losses. From the beginning of 2019, we established the systematic control and prevention strategy, and pig farmers established confidential in pig production, even under the ASFA background. So people can start upgrades by security. Pig vet developed the testing removal strategy. The strategy is very useful to eradicate the ASFA virus from the positive farm. In from the from the end of 2019, the pig market price become higher and higher. At the 2020, in 2020, the highest price is $7.2 per kilo live weight. The high profit push the group companies are expanding very rapidly, and sow inventory become double, triple, even 10 times for big companies. And by the end of the July 2021, the sow inventory in China was 45 million, recovering to 102% at the end of 2017. The price per kilogram of live pigs is $2 now. So the economic loss per market pigs is $78 per head. It means the pig inventory in China is too much. Based on China's practical experience in the past 3 years, the tips for Philippine pig industry. The only measure to prevent and control ASFA is biosecurity and eradication. Don't depend on vaccine and drugs. When the economic loss related to ASFA swine fever is severe, the opportunity period for excellent farms will come. But the opportunity will last for 2 years, and the investment to farm construction and total inventory should be planned in advance. Under ASFA, large pig production groups with good biosecurity, technical team, management ability, and capital will develop rapidly. The supplies of breeders and semen will vary short for a period of time, almost 1 year. ASFA is preventable and controllable according to the China experience, will not affect the pork supply system in the end. For the infectious disease control, there are 5 methods. The first is production management to reduce possible stress and increase infection threshold. The second is biosecurity. Biosecurity is the only effective way for prevent ASFA. focus on the biosecurity protocol and execution. The immunization is effective for some disease, but is not good enough for ASFV. Medication is effective for bacterial disease, but it is not effective for ASFV. Cure and eradication for PRRS, PRV, and ASFV. The eradication is the final choices. Testing and removal strategy is effective for emergency control of the ASFV. There is many practice in China. We have many experience. For effective health management strategy, there are three pillars. The first is a prevention system. It is 50%. The second is a health management monitoring system. It is 30%. The last is a clinical medication or emergency treatment is 20%. So we should focus on the prevention, and at the same time, we should monitor the health status of the herd. For the successful health management system, include the team, right protocol, and the management. The team is the first. Then we discuss the team building of the health management. What is the job description of the health management team? The health management system should be established under the support of the pig vet, pig production, and management. They should work as a team. Many new protocols to control ASFV should be evaluated before use. Demo trial should be scientifically done. Don't be simple copy the protocols of other companies. It may be wrong. If you have several farms, one pig vet is only responsible for the specific farm to reduce cross-contamination of visitors. It's better for the big farm. For example, 10,000 sows inventory. The pig vet should stay on site to provide the biosecurity auditing, training of the production team, health status monitoring. The biggest challenge for China pig industry is a shortage of experienced vet. The salary of the pig vet has been doubled or tripled, but it is still difficult to find enough and the right candidate. I have the experience to develop the health management team during the last 10 years. The first step is recruitment of the team. We should recruit the candidate with a veterinary background and passionate for working in pig farm. The second step is the training. We provide the training including the pig production management, health management, communication skill, presentation skill, and demo trial. The third is practice. They should practice strictly following SOP, involved in the treatment of the simple cases. For example, streptococcus cases, working with experienced vets to treat the complicated case. For example, the PRRS, ASFV, follow up the demo trial. Then the last step is a summary. Summarize every cases according to the case review. Revise our current protocol. Then we discuss upgrade the biosecurity system. For biosecurity system, we should have the right attitude. Biosecurity is the right effective way to prevent ASFV. Master the basic knowledge about the virus. How did the virus enter? How was the virus transmitted in the farm? How to stop the virus transmitted or kill the virus? The third, to establish the biosecurity protocol. The protocol should be scientific, easy execution, and practical. The last is execution, auditing, and review. Check the biosecurity execution again and again. The chart is about the investigation of the ASFV transmission risk from the different way, including the sample, including the environment, visitors, food, goods, trucks, and so on. The samples was tested by the qPCR. We can know in the North China, the transmission risk is 1% to 5%. In the South China, the contamination risk is less than 2%. It means in the winter, in North China, the infection risk is much higher than South China. For the transmission risk, different routes, the risk is different. For the high risk, including the goods, live animals, people, trucks. Also, for the feed and waters is the middle risk. For air, in fact, the ASFV is not the airborne disease. It's not very important. For the biosecurity, including the external biosecurity and internal biosecurity, external biosecurity, all of the goods that enter farms could bring in virus, including the visitors, trucks, goods, gills, cements, feed, waters, and pests. So we should monitor and disinfect every factors that enter the farms. Normally, people don't pay more attention to the internal biosecurity. For the internal biosecurity to stop the virus transmission in the farm. If you don't pay more attention to the internal biosecurity, the virus will transmission in the farm very fast. There's no opportunity to eradicate the virus from the farm. So the internal biosecurity is a base for the testing and the removal strategy. We use many for the biosecurity, including the following six means or method: quarantine, filtering, inactivity, cleaning, drying, management, protocols. For the quarantine is the isolation. It's including the location of the pig farm, the farm design. We use a small unit design and use a store and create as more as possible in the soft farm. For the group housing, we use a solid wall. The second is filtration. Is physical filtration, including the usual filtration system, the air filtering system or water filtering system. Is directly filter pathogen. The field net to prevent the mosquito, rats, flying, birds, and so on. For the inactivation, including the high temperature, pH, and chemical disinfectant. For the chemical disinfectant, working as is widely used in China. Is very safe disinfect. For the high temperature, is useful for vehicle materials, tools, food, feed, and so on. For the cleaning, drying, and downtime, for the visitors, shower in, shower out, maybe we disinfect sometimes we disinfect the visitor completely. We will give enough downtime for visitors. The empty houses, barns, vehicles, the empty barns. For some materials, it's very difficult to disinfect. For example, the crib, beddings. We will give 7 days downtime to kill the virus. To one-way circulation and separate is also very important. Separate the clean zone and dirty zone, or in or out, batch management, and so on. The management system, including the restricted flow, partition management, testing and evaluation. We should testing the pigs and semen before introduction, before use, and make sure the AFFV free. It's the modern sow farms in China, and with 6,000 sows, it's fully enclosed pig houses. The farms was constructed in 2019. Our team managed the farm, including 5 lines. One line have 1,200 sows. Normally, the non-key point of the biosecurity outbreak. The first is the environmental control around the pig farm. The regional biosecurity cooperation or management is very, very important. The second is the trucks. We should establish a vehicle cleaning and disinfection centers with complete facilities and functions. The third is a small unit housing, especially for the small unit housing is especially for the nursery and finishers and the GDU. For the feeding trough, especially for the gestation sows, the trough will be is individual. I have the picture the next. The solid wall design also very important for for the group housing, pigs, nursery finishers and gills. Offside quarantine points, goose warehouses, the central kitchen and the pig transfer desk is offsite. The fifth is upgrade the testing laboratory capacity. We establish many laboratory diagnosis center. So water disinfection, it is very important for the area where there's a lot of rains in the summer. For the dead pigs disposition should be harmless, and because during the process the virus could be transmitted area. So last is the organization of the flow, including the pig flow, people flow, goods flow, and the dirty flow. The pictures that normally for one farm there's many small farms around. So the regional biosecurity cooperation is very important. They should cooperate with each other and establish the biosecurity system together. It gives the gives pan with a solid wall, and the virus cannot transmit from one pan to another pan. The picture is a trough of the gestation cells. The for the gestation cells, she has the individual trough and the individual drinkers. For the trunk is very high transmission risk, so we should pay more attention. And normally the pig transportation trucks are specialized for one farm, especially for the big farm. And we established the three-level decontamination process, including the primary washing, fine washing, drying, and secondary drying, drying and secondary drying. And we will dry the trucks at 65 centigrade degree for 30 minutes. The trucks can be used after being washed, dried, and tested. We will test the ASFV and qPCR. Use a transfer desk for the market hogs to reduce the risk of the cross contamination. Is pictures of the truck wash and the dirty area for the dirty truck. Then wash the trucks here, and after the totally wash, then to the drying room with a high temperature. After drying, have more than 12 hours packing downtime is a cleaning area. For the visitors, we close the farms to reduce the visitors' access. The workers have holiday once a week, once per month. Sampling, testing, and quarantine before visitors enter the farms. Normally, the downtime is 36 hours. Shower in, shower out. If the visitors with high risk, we will disinfect the visitor's body totally with a working S 200 times dilution. The off-site biosecurity officer is responsible for monitoring visitors, vehicles, and goods enter. The off-site biosecurity officer is the new position after ASF3 outbreak in China. Is very important job. For the goods management is one of the biggest risks for the pig farm, because there's many goods for the goods enter the farm for the big farm. So we should strict control the entry of the private goods. Private express should be strict disinfected before enter the farm. Control the entry of all unnecessary goods. Control the source of goods procurement to avoid goods pollution as a source. Goods should be classified and enter the farm after the effective disinfection. We relocation the kitchen. Before ASFV, the kitchen is in the farm. After the ASFV outbreak in China, normally the kitchen is outside. Outside goes the farm, and only allows admission goes cooked or heat food. The feedback or backfeed are forbidden. We use normally we use feed truck or feed silos. In the picture, goes disinfection goes our phone or the electronic product, for example, mobile phone pictures will wipes the surface with working as 200 times dilution and disinfect them on the ultraviolet shelf for 1 hour. The two different way those disinfection, then take them to the living area. Because we think normally the phone temperature we use frequently is contamination risk is high. For the animals the selling pigs and the introduction of gills is a very high risk. So we monitoring the selling process and to reduce the frequency of the introduction of gills. Normally we introduce the gills at one time, then close the herd and use the semen to improve the breeders' genetics. And the treatment of the dead pig is also very important. If there's dead pig, we test the ASFV first and control the ASFV is negative. We will give the special treatment for the dead pig to avoid the cross contamination and disinfect the disinfection of the area where the dead pig contact. Is a pictures how we deliver the dead pig from inside the farm to outside of the farm, and we delivered the dead pigs from the transit platform to the truck. Here is a truck, the government truck is dirty. Here is a internal truck. Okay, in the cold storage of the dead pig to reduce the contact and frequency of the transportation of the dead pig. Normally we storage the dead pig in the here for 1 month, then deliver outside. For the drinking water, we will disinfect all ultrafiltration. For the feed, we will use the pelleting feed, and at the 85 centigrade degree for 40 seconds, and establishment goes the biosecurity system in the feed manufacturing factory. For the air, the ASFV is not the airborne disease. We normally change the ventilation model, use the vertical ventilation, and the building space is more than 30 meters. The other biosecurity protocol, including the clinical monitoring, laboratory diagnosis or monitoring system, Emergency reporting of those major infectious diseases is also very important. Biosecurity auditing again and again, training the team, the biosecurity knowledge again and again. There's no perfect biosecurity and execution, auditing, and improvement. The fourth is a pig production strategy. For the breeding strategy, at the beginning of the ASFV outbreak, there's a ecological loss of many logical sow. So the many film finisher was used as a commercial goods to increase the sow inventory because the marketing price of the live pigs is very high. So shortage of the goods, the goods is shortage. Currently, the marketing price is very low, so we use we use goods with the high status, health status, and cost management is very important now for China pig industry. In order to reduce the risk of the goods in introduction, the goods are selected from our own farm, and the internal breeding strategy should be established. After the first goods introduced, Siemens from the healthy sows with the high genetic potential was used to improve genetic performance. Okay, batch management to establish the internal biosecurity and stop group housing of the pregnancy sows and reduce or avoid all unnecessary production operations to pay for the pig movement as less as possible. Don't touch your pigs as many as possible. For the suckling piglet, we only execute the 3-day-old processing and for the weaning piglet immunization. Combine immunization, reduce the immunization of some vaccines. For example, for the classical swine fever and PRV, we vaccinate together circovirus, PCV2, and the mycoplasma vaccination together. And especially for the bacterial disease vaccines, we use as less as possible. Stop using the teasing ball. We use ball odorant instead. For the clinical observation and the abnormal identification is very important. For the farm managers, they should have the knowledge and the ability of the health management, focus on the biosecurity and monitoring of the health status. For the immune nutrition, 3 nutritional measures improve the non-specific immunity to health resistance of the pigs to the ASFV. Environment management is also very important, including the temperature, density, airflow, and ventilation to reduce stress. Drone management and we use a small production unit to reduce the cross contamination or the contact of the different pigs. So last is about the vaccination and the medication strategy. For the vaccination, we only vaccinate the necessary vaccines, including the CSFV, PRV, FMD, Mycoplasma, PCV2, and GEPPV, and so on. This vaccine is useful. We select the high efficiency vaccine. For the PERS and PD, the vaccine is not perfect. For it is necessary to acclimatize the gills to establish the herd immunization. We use bacterial vaccine as less as possible. For ASF vaccine, don't use now. Waiting for more data to verify the safety and efficiency. For medication, we established the clinical observation and emergency reporting system. It means we found the abnormal at the early stage and medication and treatment as early as possible. Reduce the individual treatment. If necessary, if you want to inject the individual pigs, please make sure the herd is ASF free. More group medication, including the feed medication and the water medication, to reduce the contact of pigs. Please remember, don't touch your pigs if unnecessary. Through the PERS eradication, environment control, and healthy gills select, disease eradication of the sulfurs to reduce the requirement of the bacterial disease control. It means if you manage your PERS environment and environment, or use a healthy gills, there's less bacterial disease. Facing the high marketing price of the alive pigs in Philippines, please select the medicine and the drug supplier with high quality to reduce the mortality and get the high economic input-output ratios, especially for the nursery pigs and gills. The situation in Philippine pig industry is very similar with us in 2019 and 2020. At that time, the marketing price is very high. At that time, we use high quality drugs and more medication, more group medication. So, summaries. Currently, the number of the sow inventory and marketing hogs have recovered to the level of the 2018 or 2017 in China. After the 2.5 years, supply is more than demand. The marketing price is low. It means the ASFV control in China is successful. For the excellent pig farms, the ASFV is opportunity for further development and get very high profit for about 1 and 2 years. Team building and the right protocol execution decides the result. So we should establish building our teams, building the teams first. Establish the right protocol. 3 key technical measures for ASFV: best security, monitoring system, testing and removal strategy. Please remember, the testing removal strategy is very successful practice in China. The transmission speed of the ASF3 is slow. The virus is easy to be killed and not resistant to the heat. So uh, the live pigs and trucks contaminated supply is the most frequent transmission route. We should pay more attention to the biosecurity, including the location, design, and the construction of the farms. We should start to upgrade the biosecurity system and rebuild the farm to strengthen the ability to prevent the ASFV. The internal building is to reduce the frequency of the gills introduction is very important. Picking the pig movement as less as possible. Don't touch your pigs if unnecessary. Reduce the vaccination frequency. Only vaccinate the necessary vaccine. Control the pulse to reduce the individual medication. Mass medication, including the feed medication and water medication to reduce the contact with pigs. Thank you for our teams, the Dr. Vet teams. They promote the pig production based on the scientific practice. Thank you. Hope you get the valuable information from my presentation. Thanks again for Elanco.
Thank you, Dr. Raymond Q. and Elanco for that very extensive information and the knowledge that you have shared on optimizing health management strategies in a large scale peak operations. A lot of very important pointers on dirty measures, especially in these very challenging times with ASF, have been explained well. Key points you have to understand is that ASF is preventable and controllable with emphasis on biosecurity and eradications. Reminders, if you have questions or clarification on his presentation, you may type them in the chat box and send it to us. These questions will be collated and will be asked during the question and answer session at the end. Now let's move on to our second topic for today, understanding the of the preventive and have to implement consistently in our farms are needed in order to prevent the entry of these pig diseases. We have, of course, need a way to ensure that our herds are free from these diseases. So we need a program for surveillance and diagnostics. With that thought in mind, we would like to present to you our second topic, which will be discussing about animal diagnostics.
Great afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to discuss the possible ways to prevent and maintain our farm free from African swine fever through the different diagnostic options and auditing process. Our topic for today is harnessing diagnostics in the animal industry, testing and audit program. We at SGS Philippines Inc. Animal Health and Nutrition Sector thank you for the opportunity given to us to present to you this afternoon. Our speaker for today is a graduate of Doctor of Veterinary Medicine from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, class of 2015. After passing the board exam, he had an opportunity to work for a multinational animal nutrition company to which he served both swine and poultry farm operations for 4 years and accumulated farm management and health and nutrition experience. He is now serving as a technical officer for the developing business sector of SGS Philippines Inc. under the Health Sciences Division, collaboratively working to identify the needs and to develop programs for the animal health and nutrition industry. Introducing our speaker for today, Dr. Abraham C. Villanueva.
Thank you so much, Dr. King, for that wonderful introduction. So again, we would like to share to everyone our business progress from year 2019 up to present date. Way back 2019, SGS is focused mainly on the crop science business, method validation of different pesticides and residues, to name a few. We were already accredited by the Bureau of Animal Industry to test different feeds and raw materials parameters. For the year 2020, when we joined SGS Animal Health and Nutrition team, we were able to be accredited by the Bureau of Animal Industry as an animal health disease diagnostic laboratory to test African swine fever DNA through RT-PCR and develop and launch a program in the process. For the year 2021, we are able to develop a program and innovate mycotoxin testing locally and additional service using ELISA method, both for health and nutrition. Truly, it is an exciting times ahead for SGS Animal Health Nutrition Business Sector. The certificate of recognition from the Bureau of Animal Industry and from the Philippine Accreditation Bureau indicating that we are both recognized to test African swine fever by the government and aligned with the ISO 17025 guidelines to test the different matrices like blood, serum, organs, meat, finished feeds, raw materials, water, and environmental swabs for a wider scope of testing, which enables us to have a better scope of diagnostic possibilities needed by the farm to prevent African swine fever as well as maintain disease-free status of the farm. Before we proceed, we would like to share to you a short statement from Peter Drucker. You can't manage what you don't measure. You don't measure what you don't define. You don't define what you don't understand. And of course, there's no success in what you don't manage. In everything that we may do, may it be in our personal lives, or in the feed mill operations or farm operations, we need first to understand and define the issues and concerns before we can manage it effectively and efficiently. Objective measurement is very important in risk analysis. As the map shows, which is published last September 3, 2021, we are still dealing with a large area of infected regions in Luzon, but there is light at the end of the tunnel because since there are already some municipalities in Batangas declared from infected zone to a buffer zone, which is a really good thing to start the repopulation initiatives. Moving to the Visayas group of islands, for the whole year of 2020, The Visayas group of islands were not affected by the African swine fever virus, but earlier this year, unfortunately, it spread first on the islands of Samar and of course in Leyte, and of course the other provinces were already also affected and spread to nearby provinces as well. Moving towards the Mindanao Island, the eastern part of Mindanao has suffered from outbreaks of African swine fever, but has managed to control further spread in the western part of the island. So actually, that's a good thing. And of course, our value proposition to our clients, to our partners in the country, is when you need to be sure to restart your farming operations, protect areas not yet affected by African swine fever, and to prevent further spread and contain the virus, we can consider these readily available programs to guide us, but most importantly, to give us an assurance that we are doing the right thing from start to end. But most importantly, during the maintenance and preventive stage as well. First things first, we need to identify the critical control points in our farming operations. This example from the Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point Program give us a concrete guide on how to define the critical control points. It is made up of a series of questions that can be answered by a yes or no. It mainly answers the three questions of sampling. Why do we get the sample? How do we get the sample? And how frequent do we get the sample? This serves as an analytical process to minimize the cost of laboratory analysis and at the same time to identify the possible risks in the operations. Because there's no such thing as a zero risk, there could only be lower risk, moderate risk, and higher risk. And it is up to us how to lessen or at least mitigate the risk involved. We can therefore ask ourselves, what can be prevented, what can be reduced, and what can be eliminated. So this is giving us a very good guide to follow, a very good objective approach on how to really identify the samples in the farm or in the feed mill operations. Again, the program background, the program that takes into account all of the necessary factors to ensure that biosecurity, both inside and outside of the farm, are taken into consideration. And of course, to prevent animal diseases, specifically African swine fever, to ensure continuous and unhampered profitability of livestock farming in the country while adhering to the standards presented by the government and private institutions to make food production safe and sustainable. The program is actually further subdivided into four. The first is the Sentinel program, which is composed of the pre-Sentinel assessment, which takes use of the water testing and environmental swab testing. Pre-Sentinel is a very important and crucial stage of assessment to see the preparedness and current status of the farm, specifically if they had a history of African swine fever infection, and of course to check possible African swine fever viral DNA presence in the farm premises, and as well to check the effectivity and efficiency of cleaning and disinfection, and the downtime, among others. The second sub-program is what we call as SureClean. It takes use of ATP testing and as well as environmental swabbing. ATP testing to test the bacterial load. If the farm were able to implement efficient and effective cleaning and disinfection of the premises, and as well as to check the possible presence of African swine fever viral DNA in the farm premises. How can we be sure? Okay, sure clean. Third is the screening process. So again, a farm where going to start a repopulation process will be needing a lot of breeder animals. That's why it's very important to have a very good screening program or process. Blood, serum, semen, organs, or meat can actually be tested for possible African swine fever contamination. And of course, the fourth sub-program is how safe are your feeds. It takes use of testing raw materials like grains, cereals, or oats for that matter, and of course, finished feeds for us to really check the most important factor in traceability. Where do we source our feeds? Where do we source our raw materials? Is it coming from infected areas, infected municipalities or provinces? That's the importance of testing. For this slide, we will talk about where does the four sub-programs and the different testing matrices we have discussed earlier applies. So again, this is a very basic swine production flow chart. So we start from the outside of the farm, we have a demarcation from the outside and the inside of the farm. Then you go to the feed mill, you go to the storage areas, you go to the buildings. If they have a previous history of African swine fever, and you need to assess first if the cleaning and the disinfection methods and the downtime procedures were applied properly. And of course, it is very essential to conduct sufficient testing. Water collection is also an essential part of the process. Repopulating farms would need, of course, the breeder, the sows, the boars, the piglets. And of course, we need to have a proper screening method in order for us to not waste the initial test done in the farm prior. Vehicles can also be tested for possible presence of African swine fever being the top most spreader of the said disease. Is doing car wash enough to be sure that they don't have possible contamination of African swine fever? Most especially if the vehicles came from slaughterhouses, marketplace, or of course, other farms. During the maintenance stage, of course, as mandated by the government, all live pigs should undergo representative testing of their blood or serum before it's marketed. Feeds and raw materials should also be assessed. Traceability, the source for possible risk, and the need to identify the source is very important to understand the level of risk that we're dealing with. Of course, the program value in use because some farms already repopulated without doing initial assessment first, there could be a possibility that the farm premises is still contaminated and can cause huge economical losses. By doing a pre-sentinel assessment, as shown here in the slide, the farm owner, the veterinarian, and the consultants would have a strong supporting reference for their decision-making to proceed or not with the repopulation stage. Pre-Sentinel takes use of environmental swabbing and water collection inside the farm with critical control points predetermined already. And of course, this shows the wide difference of potential losses if the farm was found out to be harboring African swine fever in the premises. So as you can see here, a farm without doing an initial assessment first, before a farm doing an initial assessment first, there could be a possible loss of around 1.8 million pesos. And as we might already know, the capital investment of restarting or repopulating a farming operation would require a high financial requirement. And this will determine if the farm will proceed with the maintenance biosecurity Sentinel program. Okay, as shown in the slide, these are some collection sampling points and the risk associated with them. As you can see here, we can collect with the deep well water source or the clean water source because there's a risk of possible seepage, especially if the farm buried their mortalities inside the farm premises. Environmental swab collection can also be collected using statistical analysis to arrive at a critical control points that we can collect to detect the possible presence of African swine fever viral DNA in the premises. Because again, it can produce a new outbreak. We can also check and assess the efficiency and effectivity of the cleaning and disinfection, and of course, the downtime procedures were applied correctly. Wastewater collection, of course, ensuring the potential entry points and source of infection by African swine fever to a repopulating farm is secured and assessed prior. Vehicle swab collection. Mobility is threat to biosecurity. As we might already know, vehicles are the topmost spreader of viruses, especially African swine fever. So the question still stands. Is it enough to just do a car wash? Or we might as well include as part of our hazard analysis biosecurity program to include as well a vehicle swab collection. Finished feeds and raw materials testing. The source and traceability is important since feeds and raw mats can be a vector of African swine fever through sourcing, processing, storage, and transportation. Some feed ingredients can also be predisposed to higher risk of African swine fever contamination, like meat and bone meat, animal protein, and soybean, to name a few. And of course, as part of the local government unit initiatives to control African swine fever spread, there could be a requirement to test the transportation of raw materials and finished feeds from different provinces or municipalities passing through different borders. An ASF testing could be a requirement. And as part of the program, the testing program and auditing program, we also offer a third-party audit. It is composed of the preparatory stage, which includes history and documentation, the actual farm visit. When we do an auditing analysis, we have a list of what we can need to observe, what is observed, and therefore it will be going into the reporting, analysis, and recommendation stage, whereas the audit report will have a pass fast with recommendations, and failed results. Qualitative and quantitative risk assessment. And of course, we can also share or provide the client with a certificate, which indicates good, fair, and poor biosecurity. And of course, as part of an ever-improving biosecurity measures, we can also include and schedule the next farm visits. Monitoring, the enforcement, QR codes for faster turnaround time of results and reference, quick reference, announced and unannounced visits. The key to changing behaviors and practices lies in people's perceptions of the level of risk. Identifying the level of risk is one of the goals of biosecurity audit. Again, it's up to us to really understand and define the issues and concerns that we're currently having, the risks that we might already have or going to have, because those risks will make us understand and apply the different managemental procedures that we need to do inside and outside of our farming operations. And so, for the key takeaways, first is investing in disease prevention secures business stability and growth. Harnessing diagnostics in the animal industry can help farm owners to recover efficiently, guided by the principles of analysis. So again, it's very important for us to really be objective. Third is improving biosecurity protocols continuously is an integral part in the prevention of African swine fever. And lastly, ensuring the safety and quality of feeds and raw materials regularly is key part of the value chain process.
At the heart of everything we do is our purpose, to enable a better, safer, and more interconnected world, and add real, measurable value to society. The challenges of 2020 made this even more important, and we continue to work hard to make our contribution. We help make sure our own people are safe and secure, taking care of their well-being and that of their families and broader communities. We find innovative ways to help our customers meet new challenges, keep working, and plan their recovery from the pandemic. We have increased capacity at our Biosafety Center in Glasgow to help companies test new vaccines, including those for coronavirus, while still allowing our people to do other vital work. In a year when personal protective equipment has never been more important, we test, certify, and improve the quality of items such as masks, replicating this expertise in other parts of the world. Our quick remote testing app allows us to undertake remote inspections even during lockdowns, reducing risk and saving time. These factors have a real impact on our performance and where it is strongest, across the different sectors of our business and the different regions in which we operate. Our resilience and ability to innovate are reflected in our financial results for 2020. While our sustainability achievements reflect our commitment to enable a better, safer, and more interconnected world.
Ship it up, 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 ship it up. Ship
All right. So if you want to know more, please contact our team in SGS Animal Health and Nutrition with the following contact details. Thank you so much for the opportunity to give us that you have given us for us to discuss and present this program. When you need to be sure to restart, protect, and contain SGS Kalayaan 1 program. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, Thank you, SGS, and thank you, Dr. Abe Villanueva, for this information on diagnostics and the different programs in surveillance and audit in our farms and its importance in our daily farm operations. It is also worthwhile to see your cost benefit evaluation on the Sentinel program testing. We all agree that we cannot manage what we do not measure. And I quote from one of your slides, the key to changing behaviors and practices lies in the people's perceptions of the level of risk. So if you have any questions or clarification on this presentation, please type them in our chat box. With that, let's move forward to our next topic. In our pig farms, we know that the mating area is one of the most critical section of the production. Without the sows being mated successfully, there will be no piglets for finishing hogs for market. Without the breedable gilts and sows for mating and not enough numbers, we will be left with empty crates in the gestation and more so in our farrowing crates. Our next speaker from Seva Animal Health will be discussing on this topic in this next presentation.
Good day to everyone. My name is Ain Arejola, Marketing Manager of Seva Animal Health Philippines. Allow me to introduce our speaker for this session. He is a graduate of veterinary medicine from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. His experience is extensive in the field of swine farming, having had exposure in various roles for a number of swine industry players. After his first stint with Hypor Philippines, he has moved within the industry in the sales, feed milling, and operations segments. He is currently the Technical Services Manager for Swine Pharmaceuticals of Seva. Please welcome Dr. Donon Ray Canoy.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. The topic of discussion today is all out, all in batch management in the new normal. I'll be speaking in Filipino, in English, so that I can deliver the message better. Good biosecurity. Una is the isolation. When we plant the farm, we would like to uh, put it in a place na malayo tayo sa neighboring farms, neighboring piggery, or neighboring poultry, or any farm animals. Also, we would like to be isolated from residential areas. Ang mga staff sa loob ng farm, uh, we can limit their movement sa kanilang mga assigned section or sa mga assigned segments. So from their segments, ang balik nila doon sa kanilang mga quarters or doon sa dining area. Hindi dapat makita ang mga taga-farrowing na pumupunta sa gestation or sa nursery. The same is true, yung mga taga-gestation hindi nagagalayan sa farrowing. Para ma-prevent natin ang contamination from one section to another. Then the cleaning and disinfection. All-out management. Nag-umpisa ito when we move the animals. So, ibig sabihin, halimbawa sa nursery, o kaya natin yan sa mga growing, finishing. So, ang kailangan natin gawin, we move all out the animals. Kailangan masiro ang building. Hindi dapat nag-iiwan doon ng mga animals even though they are still growing. Halimbawa, yung sa isang building may naiwan na isang pen dahil meron pang mga slow growers. Dapat nailabas na sila lahat. So that we can clean, we can disinfect, and we can dry. If there are still animals in the building, then we cannot achieve high efficiency sa ating cleaning, disinfection, and drying. Okay, all in. So kung empty na yung ating building, yung ating mga facilities, siyempre, nagkaroon na rito ng cleaning, disinfection, and drying. We will do again another cleaning, disinfection, and drying before putting the new batch of animals. So terminal disinfection, all in. Okay? So relationship ng biosecurity and batch management. Mag-start tayo sa peak flow management. From the sow unit, nagtatransfer tayo ng piglets sa nursery. Ang nagiging problema kapag kulang or sobra, yung space na ina-allocate para doon dadali ng mga animals, pag kulang, yung susunod na batch, pinupuno. Okay? Pero pag sobra naman, yung susunod na space, nalalagyan agad. And then, pagdating ng susunod na batch, pinupunuan. The same goes through with the growing and the finishing section. What we would like to do, what we plan to do, is from the sow unit, meron tayong allocation na nursery pens na hindi sobra, hindi kulang, but we are transferring the right number, the target number para doon, para nananggaling sa sow unit. And then this is true doon sa growing and the finishing section. So ito yung plano natin, ito yung gusto nating gawin sa ating farm. Ang una natin dapat ma-manage ay ang mating or breeding. Kasi if we were able to control the mating, then we can control the farrowing events. Eventually, we can control the weaning, and hopefully, we can determine the number of piglets to be weaned. Okay, the breeding flow. Una nating gagawin, we follow the target of 24% monthly. The modification that we will do is magkakaroon tayo ng 6% per week breeding. Kasi, ang nangyayari sa week 1, sa 6% na target, ang na-achieve lang ay 4%. Pagdating ng week 2, 6% target, ang ma-achieve lang uli 4%. So week 1, week 2, 8% pa lang ang na-achieve. Pagdating ng week 3 at pagdating ng week 4, hahabulin. Okay? Hahabulin ngayon ang requirements or ang target na 24. So 8% week 1, week 2, for 8% week 3, 8% week 4. Ang end result noon, 24% pa rin sa month. Now, this causes the problem. Kasi week 1, week 2, kulang ang mga production, pero pagdating ng week 3 at week 4, sobra naman ang production. Farrowing follows kung ano ang ginawa natin sa breeding. Kaya kung kulang ang ating breeding, basically, kulang din ang lalabas na farrowing. Pag sobra naman ang farrowing, ang result naman noon, sobra din naman ang breeding. So the number of piglets produced ay depende yan from the beginning kung ilan ang nabibreed. Paano natin gagamitin ang alternages para ma-achieve natin ang ating target breeding? Mag-start tayo sa ovary. Dito nangyayari ang estrous cycle. So una, meron tinatawag na follicular phase wherein the follicles develop into eggs. And when the eggs are matured, nare-release to, nagkakaroon ng ovulation. Followed by a luteal phase. Ibig sabihin yung pinanggalingan ng follicle, nagiging corpus luteum to nourish the developing fertilized egg. Kung walang fertilized egg, matutunaw itong corpus luteum, mag-atretic yung egg. And then it will start again sa follicular phase. So sa estrous cycle, this composes the follicular phase, 5 days, the estrus or ovulation phase, 2 days, and the luteal phase, 14 days. After ovulation, the next 14 days, ang magiging dominant hormone will be the progesterone. This is produced by the corpus luteum. On the 15th to 16th day, kung walang fertilized egg, natutunaw ang corpus luteum and this will be followed by the follicular phase, and the dominant hormone will be estrogen because of the developing egg. And then this will be followed by ovulation phase, and the dominant hormone will be luteinizing hormone. Synchronization and batch management. When to start treatment with alterenogens? During luteal phase. So, ibig sabihin, the 14 days luteal, pwede tayo magbigay ng alterenogens. During follicular phase, before ovulation. We can also treat before ovulation. When we treat with alterenogens, yung process, yung releasing ng egg will stop. And when we withdraw the alterenogens, magre-resume yung process and the eggs will be released 6 days after. So, ibig sabihin, we can treat during luteal phase, follicular phase, or ovulation phase. So, any stage of the estrous cycle. Kung meron tayong apat na guilds with different estrous stage, ibig sabihin meron silang kanya-kanyang schedule ng estrus. But with the use of alternages, we can synchronize all the animals para sa anong time natin sila i-breed. We give alternages 5 ml per day. Kaya kung nag-start tayo sa day 1, alas 8 ng umaga, kailangan hanggang day 18, alas 8 ng umaga tayo nagbibigay. So, 18 consecutive days. And afterwards, magwi-withdraw tayo ng 6 days. We will wait for the estrus to occur. Ang efficiency ng alternages to synchronize animal is 95 to 98%. If you are getting less, ibig sabihin merong mali sa process or merong other problems ang animals. To synchronize gilts and sow, ang ating magiging reference is the winning day ng sow. Kung 28 days winning, kung yan ay Thursday, this should also be the last day of treatment para sa alternages sa gilts. 6 days after winning, 5 to 6 days after winning, ang sow ay mag-estrus. Ganun din ang mangyayari sa gilts. 6 days after last day of treatment, ang gilts ay mag-estrus. So we can synchronize the estrus ng gilts and we can synchronize the estrus ng sow. This is followed by breeding. Na-synchronize na natin ang estrus and breeding ng gilts and sow. With the proper target na ma-breed, then we can produce the target number of farrowings. And this will be followed by the number of piglets produced per batch. The batch management. Thursday weaning will give us Tuesday, Monday, and Wednesday breeding. 114 days after, ang farrowing will occur on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. If you will notice, this is in the middle of the week. So yung overlapping from one batch to another ay nami-minimize because our farrowing is occurring during the middle of the week. Maraming different types of batches. Merong weekly batch, merong 2-week batch, merong 3-week batch, merong 4-week batch, merong 5-week batch, merong 6-week batch, and so on. Pero pare-parehas naman ang gestation time sa mga batching system. Ang naiiba lang, yung 2-week batch, ang iyong winning day ay magiging 21 days. But the weekly batch and the 3-week batch, they have 28 days winning. So I will be talking about the weekly and the 3-week batch. Weekly batch or 3-week batch, ang rotation ng farrowing crates ay 6 weeks. So merong acclimatization, then week 2 and 2-5 will be the lactation time, then week 6 is the cleaning, disinfection, and drying. Then pagdating uli ng week 7 is again acclimatization. And this we follow again. So, yung acclimatization is around 5 to 7 days ng mga sow transferring to the farrowing unit. And then lactation period, 28 days plus minus 4. And then the cleaning, disinfection, and drying is about 3 to 4 days plus terminal disinfection will give us another 2 days. So ito ngayon ang cycle ng farrowing crates. Sa 1,000 sow level, sa 24% monthly breeding, meron tayong 240 bread. 85% will give us 204 farrowings. This will sa 12 piglets per sow, this is 2,448. Pre-weaning, meron 10% mortality. If we can do better, we mas less. And then post-weaning, meron uling 4% mortality. Again, gusto natin mas mababa. So kung gagawin naman natin yung weekly, sa 6% we will breed 60 animals. 85% of this is 51 ang magpa-farrow. Sa 12 piglets produced per sow, and also meron din tayong 10% mortality sa pre-weaning and another 4% mortality sa post-weaning. Again, this is the illustration of the number of pens or groups sa gestation, sa farrowing, sa nursery, and sa growing finishing section. Sa 3-week batch, i-divide natin ang number of sows into 7 groups. So yung batch 1 will mangyayari yan sa week 1 breeding. Yung batch 2 ay sa week number 4. Batch number 3 is week number 7. Batch number 4 is week number 10. Batch number 5 is week number 13. Batch number 6 is week number 16. And batch number 7 is week 19. Sa weekly batch, nagbe-breed tayo from week 1, week 2 hanggang week 21. Sa 3-week batch, yung batch 1 na na-breed ng week 1, manganganak siya after 114 days, 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days. Or kung 16 weeks, okay, kasi 16 weeks is equivalent to 112. Kaya yung gestation period, breeding ng week 1, ang farrowing niya is week 17. So, after farrowing, merong 4 weeks na lactation. So, ang weaning niya is on the week 21. So, weaning, this is equivalent doon sa drying. And then, after drying, yung susunod na weaning, kung Thursday tayo nag-wean, then magbe-breed tayo ng Tuesday, Monday, and Wednesday. So, pagkatapos ng 7 batches, ibig sabihin yung na-breed mo ng batch 1, sila na uli yung i-breed natin sa batch number 8. Kasi nakompleto na natin ang rotation ng 7 groups sa 3-week batch. So, sila na uli ito, batch number 8. On week 22, ma-realize na natin or ma-achieve na natin yung ating tinatawag na 3-week batch. Ito yung merong week na farrowing, merong week na weaning, at merong week na breeding. So doon sa farrowing, sila yung 153. Yung tatlong 51 weekly na nanganganak, sila yung darating sa 3-week batch na 153 manganganak ng isang week. And then, yung susunod na week will be the weaning, okay, ng 153 animals or 153 sows. And then this will be followed by 180 breeding of animals. Okay, ito yung 60, 60, 60. So, tatlong 60, tatlong weeks. So, this is 180. Ang maganda dito sa 3-week batch, una, na-segmentize natin ang age ng piglets. Ang difference nila is basically 21 days. Pangalawa, na yung immunity, yung programming natin sa mga vaccination, sa medication, ay mas madali because hindi na nag-overlap from one week to another. Kasi meron na nga silang 21 days, these are 21 days gap. So mas madali na ngayon mag-plan, mag-schedule ng vaccination, and also yung mag-schedule ng mga feeds, allocation, and also yung mga other activities sa farm. Ang resulta ng 3-week batch ay una na-separate natin ang mga ages ng mga piglet. Nagkaroon tayo ngayon ng 21 days gap from one batch to another. Yung mga inahin din natin, we were able to separate them. Nagkaroon din sila ng 3-week batch, 3-week gap. So, yung mga diseases na normally na natatransfer from one week to another, kung hindi sila na-eliminate, we were able to minimize. Now, yung sa discussion na to, ang pinaka-message natin sa ating mga farm owners, sa mga farm producers, yung planning of the farm. The take-home message is to plan the farm, which is the message of the 3-week batch, and to farm the plant. Because with the 3-week batch, maraming benefits sa health, maraming benefits sa growth rate, and then marami ring benefits sa activities. We were able to organize. Ang isang maganda nakikita ko rito, experience ko doon sa isang farm, na they were able to schedule na pagdating ng Christmas at New Year, walang manganganak sa farm. So, ibig sabihin, ang mga tao ay pwedeng mag-spend ng Christmas and New Year sa kanilang bahay because ang management lang na gagawin sa farm during those days, halimbawa ay pwede naman nilang schedule na weaning lang. So, wala yung critical na breeding at wala yung critical na farrowing. Okay? So, again, the message is to plan the farm and to execute the plan by farming the plant. Okay? So, thank you for listening and good day. Keep safe. Thank you.
There's a dream I feel so rare, so real, and the world in union, the world as one, gathering together, one world, one health. Every creed, every color, once joined, never apart. Searching for the best in me. I will fight what I can beat. If I win, lose, or draw, there's a winner in us all. It's the world in union, the world as one, as we climb to reach our destiny. A new age has begun. We must face high mountains, must cross rough seas. We must take our place in history and live with dignity. It's our world in union, all divided one, as we fly to reach our destiny. A new age has begun.
Thank you, Dr. Kanoy of Seva Animal Health, for this detailed information on batch farrowing, how we manage our mating pool in making sure we get to optimize our remaining females, and in those repopulating sow herds, we get to start with the optimum number of females for mating to manage our farm facilities and resources. I really like the tagline, plan the farm the plan. Hope you are still with us and stay with us until the end of this day because we have some surprises in store for you. So if you have questions on the first three topics, please type them in and send them in the chat box. As we moved on in planning our repopulating or increasing sow population, if you have already started repopulation efforts, there are, of course, other things that we have to understand, re-understand, and restudy and to take into consideration, one of which is the responsible use of medication in our farms. Our next talk will be about antimicrobial resistance, and it will be presented by Biomin.
Hello and good afternoon. Our topic is the modern approaches to measuring the resistome and importance in managing antimicrobial resistance. Our speaker is the Regional Product Manager of Biomin Singapore and the concurrent Swine Technical Marketing Global of DSM Animal Health and Nutrition. He is an Australian and holds a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture, major in Hello and good afternoon. Our topic is the modern approaches to measuring the resistome and importance in managing antimicrobial resistance. Our speaker is the Regional Product Manager of Biomin Singapore and the concurrent Swine Technical Marketing Global of DSM Animal Health and Nutrition. He is an Australian and holds a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture, major in Animal Science, and a PhD in Pig Nutrition from University.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're enjoying this very important 25th Pinoy Pork Challenge. My name is Neil Gannon and I'm the Regional Product Manager for Bioman Singapore, and with the acquisition by Bioman of DSM, I was also the Swine Technical Marketing Manager. As you can see from my brief bio, I am an animal nutritionist by training, and I've had a long career in monogastric nutrition. Today I would like to talk to you about the modern approaches to measuring the resistome and the importance in managing the resistome for reducing antimicrobial resistance. The overview of my presentation will be an introduction to the terminology used in monitoring antimicrobial resistance. I will look at a brief comparison of the methods to determine antimicrobial resistance, a quick refresher on the bacterial and chemical gradients of the gastrointestinal tract of the pig and why this is relevant in terms of today's presentation. Then give you some brief examples of what the resistome measurement looks like and how it can be applied in swine production, particularly why resistant monitoring is important in relation to ASF and other emerging diseases. And time for a conclusion and some questions in the chat. As we know, there are a variety of modes of action of antimicrobial agents. Depending on the antibiotic chosen, it could work on the DNA, the antimicrobial could work on the ribosomes, such as tetracyclines, or it can tackle the cell wall, such as bacitracin. And so a different mode of action depending on the antimicrobial agent that you're choosing. What we know is that there are a variety of mechanisms of antibiotic resistance, and there's 5 main groups, but there's thousands of different variations. And the bacteria develop this resistance through producing destructive enzymes that attack the antibiotic. The bacteria can modify the antimicrobial target, either by mutation, so that the drugs cannot recognize them. The bug can look at preventing antibiotics from entering the cell by creating this biofilm, or otherwise reducing the permeability of the cell. And the bacteria can remove the antimicrobial agents by simply pumping them out and increasing the metabolic systems. And also we can see that bacteria create bypasses that allow the bacteria to function without the enzymes that are particularly targeted by antibiotics. And so what we see is that antibiotics are often only 1 or 2 compounds, so they're relatively easy for the bacteria to evolve, become resistant to them. And given that most antibiotics are actually derived from fungal compounds, bacteria have evolved over thousands and thousands of years. And in fact, gastrointestinal samples from mummies from the Inca area, about 1,000 years old, have already been shown to have resistance to antimicrobial drugs that have only been recently developed in the last 5 years or so. So it's nothing new for bacteria to have resistance. In terms of resistance, what is really important, and again without going into too much detail, is that there are small remnants of DNA in an organelle called a plasmid, and the resistance genes are encoded in this plasmid, this little strip of DNA, and this plasmid can be ejected from the cell and can be picked up by other like bacteria or other bacteria that aren't even in the same family. And so this is how, in the simple terms, we can get bacterial resistance being transferred from Salmonella to E. coli, even though they're a completely different species, or into these resistance genes can be transferred to non-pathogenic bacteria, and the resistance genes can live on for many years. And it doesn't really matter whether it's a human, a livestock, or a companion animal bacteria. These plasmids can be circulated throughout the whole of the system, and this is why we have a One Health program, where we're trying to reduce antimicrobial resistance in both the human space, the livestock space, as well as the companion animal space. In terms of some of the definitions for what we're using today, omics is a short name for all the fancy scientific methods. We have genomics, nutrigenomics, etc. And this is a very detailed scientific area of investigation. In terms of the microbiome, what we're referring to here is all the genetic material that's contained in the microbes of a system, and the system could be the gastrointestinal tract, for example. And what the microbiome does, it takes account of the living and the dead bugs. And I'll show you why this is important in the coming slides. In terms of this complex area called the resistome, this is all the genetic material concerned with the antibiotic resistance that is contained within a microbiome or the microbial population. So the resistome is a subset of the microbiome and particularly focused on antibiotic resistance. When we start describing the microbiome, we talk about areas such as richness and diversity. And these describe the distribution of the bugs within a population. Richness is the number of species in a community, so how many different types we have. And diversity then takes account of both the number of species and how many, the abundance of individual bugs there are. And this is really important in terms of, with resistance, we try and want to have a limited number of richness, so there's not many choices of resistance, and a limited number of diversity. However, when we look at gut health in general, diversity is really important for optimizing animal performance. So the terms richness and diversity are important, and they have different, whether you want the one to increase or decrease, depends on what you're looking for. An example to try and help illustrate the difference between richness and diversity is shown in this particular slide. So both of these communities, the one on the left and the one on the right, have equal richness because they have the same number of different species. There's three: there's the flower, the tree, and the bird. So the flower, the tree, and the bird is represented in each of these communities. However, the one on the right has a higher diversity because there is more uniformity in terms of the distribution of those particular species, whereas the one on the left has a low diversity because it's dominated by the flower. So hopefully that makes it a bit clear, and it will, in the coming slides, it will also show you how this works. Just taking you back to some of the high school definitions around what goes on in the pig gastrointestinal tract. And this is a bit of a schematic looking at the microbial gradients in the pig. So when we look at total bacteria, we can see as you go down into the stomach, the numbers drop, and along the small intestine, numbers gradually start to increase. And then in the large intestine, there's a large number of bacteria. When we start looking at the different types of bacteria, what we see is that there's a change, there's a difference between the lactobacillus, typically the good guys that are involved in the small intestine, compared to the butyrate producers and the strict anaerobes that are very low in the small intestine, but obviously they have to do their job in the hindgut where there's fermentation. And so within a particular section of the gastrointestinal tract, we'll have a different proportion of bacteria. When we start looking at the physiological gradients that go on in the pig gastrointestinal tract, we can see that there's big changes in pH as well. As you go into the stomach, the pH drops, and then as we move into the small intestine, the pH starts to rise again. And we know that the pH is important for in the small intestine in terms of acidification. It's very difficult to acidify the gut, but what we can actually do is we can change the conditions to promote the growth of the beneficial bacteria that like the low pH, as opposed to making the conditions suitable for the pathogenic bacteria which prefer a higher pH. And as we move into the large intestine, it gets close to neutral. And what we see as we go along, the oxygen content changes, again because of the type of bacteria that have grown there. And we can also see that the nutrient content will change as well. Obviously the protein and carbohydrate in the feed, there's no absorption. As we go through the gastrointestinal tract, we get absorption. And so the protein and carbohydrate levels are quite low at the end of the rectum. But what we do see is that resistant carbohydrates, because these are resistant, they start to increase in proportion of the digester. We have a lot more resistant carbohydrates, and this is where the fermented bacteria start to function in the large intestine. And so the take-home message from all of this is that the conditions and the microbial profile of the gastrointestinal tract varies greatly. And so it's really important to know what the section of the intestinal tract where your sample was taken, so that you can account for the differences in populations, the differences in function of those particular bacteria. So how do we measure bacterial resistance? Well, the traditional method has just been through culture. You know, we have an agar plate where we take a sample of bacteria from an animal or feces, and we grow it under particular conditions. And we look at the phenotype of the bacteria, how does it grow, and we can characterize it. And this is the classic microbiology techniques that you might have done at high school or university. The problem with this approach is that they're very culture dependent, and there's many bugs that we know we can't actually grow. We just don't have the right nutrition in the agar plates, or the right aerobic conditions, or some other thing that the bacteria prefers to actually culture many of these bugs. And we can use this technique quite readily to look at the growth or lack of growth in the presence of antibiotics. And this is where the MIC, the minimum inhibitory concentration, starts to come into play. The problem is that when we look at these techniques, in terms of what we know now of the gastrointestinal tract, the amount of bacteria that we can actually culture from the gut is very small compared to what we know is there. And so this is quite a limited technique. We also need to have living samples. And so we, again, because of the differences in the gradients across the gastrointestinal tract, we might actually have some dead bacteria that are important in the animal, but we can't culture. And so therefore, traditional methods give us a bit of a limited insight into antimicrobial resistance. A newer technology that's been around for several years now is the PCR, the polymerase chain reaction. And what this does is isolates a number of genes that we can extract from a particular bacteria and look at their proportion. We can quantify some of these bacteria. It's quite costly, but again, it's still looking at the presence or absence of specific genes in bacteria, not the full picture that goes on. And so it's effective technique, but it still gives us a little bit of a limited insight. What the modern way of doing it now is this technology called next generation sequencing. And this is a really powerful technique that's been able to be used a lot with the advent of supercomputers, because it looks at all the genetic information in a sample. It's culture independent because we actually extract the DNA or the RNA and of all of the bacteria that's in the sample. So whether that bacteria is alive or dead, its DNA and its RNA are still present. And with the amount of data we generate, it gives us an enormous amount of data to analyze. And this is where I'll show you some of the results. So in terms of what sort of information does next generation sequencing provide? Well, what we can see is that if we just take, and this is just looking at two different treatments, what we can see is that in terms of ileomucosa, we can look at what happens when a treatment is applied in terms of the impact on the Campylobacter levels. And in this case, this was a phytogenic compound that showed a reduction in the Campylobacter. And similarly, when we look at the proteobacteria, and this is the Salmonellas and the E. coli, again, in this particular case, the phytogenic decreased the presence of the proteobacteria. And so we can use this sort of typing because this next generation sequencing enables it's a genetic fingerprint of every single bacteria. It's not unlike what goes on in forensics in humans, where every human has a direct fingerprint that is peculiar to us as an individual, not as a species. We can also start using this technique to look at what happens when we use a treatment in terms of what families are increased or decreased. And again, a wealth of information, and we can start to see that there's millions of bacteria classes here that are present that we would never be able to culture. So again, next generation sequencing is a really powerful technique. And this is some work that we've been doing with Dana Stanley at the University of Central Queensland in Australia. In terms of the resistome analysis, because we collect the sequence, in this particular case, the sequel sample, we can sequence all the DNA, and then we can match the DNA to all the known databases of resistance. And so we can start to build up a picture of what is the mode of action. So this is efflux pump, you may not be able to see it, but we know that there's all these genes that are involved in the efflux pump aspect. Or we can look at what goes on in terms of the antibiotic target. So again, lots of information, not peculiar to pigs, but also across the human, the rat, and the poultry sectors. So now we have a lot more information about the types of resistance that is present within a particular sample. And we can now start to move into metagenomics. And this is where we start to look at what happens when we see in terms of a particular enzyme, so sucrose degradation, for example, here, or thiamine diphosphate, the ability to produce pyruvate from fermentation. We can now start to see what happens when we compare treatments to what's going on at this very metabolic level, which is probably resulting in the performance issues or the performance observations in terms of better feed conversion, better live weight, these sorts of things. So the metagenomics information that we get out of next generation sequencing is really also quite powerful. And we know, even though it's very difficult to measure in the animal, we know that in terms of inflammatory processes, it's also driven by the genetic components. And so this is a quick representation of a cell. And if you have a stressor, the stressor impacts the cell up here in the top left-hand corner. It triggers on one side a series of activities that operate through this NF-kappa B molecule. And that NF-kappa B molecule codes the DNA to produce these things called pro-inflammatory cytokines. And these are cell messengers that increase inflammation. On the other side, trying to balance those effects, is there another operation that works through this NRF2 factor? And NRF2 codes for particular proteins and anti-inflammatory enzymes that reduce inflammation. And so this is very difficult to measure in a tissue level, but we can identify it through the genetic, the upregulation or downregulation of the DNA and RNA in a particular cell. And what we're trying to achieve when we're looking at reducing inflammation is that we want to try and reduce the pro-inflammatory cytokines through this NF-kappa B, and at the same time increase the production of these anti-inflammatory proteins, because these offer cell protection effects. And so again, another example of how next generation sequencing can be really important. The beauty of, and this is deliberately sort of vague so you can't see all the detail, but what it is what we call a heat map. And with all the powerful information, because we know that a gene is consistent in terms of its function across all sorts of species, humans, mouse, birds, lots of things. And so by using powerful analysis and published papers, we can now start to generate heat maps to see, in this particular area here is cancer, we can look at gastrointestinal disease, and we can start to see the impact of a particular treatment on whether it upregulates or downregulates various factors that are known, or genes that are known to influence cancer. So again, a very powerful technology that we can get from a single analysis of a sample. So how does NGS and knowledge of resistomes relate to ASF and other emerging diseases? Well, as we've seen in the previous images, NGS provides a very detailed picture of the underlying genetic drivers of areas such as metabolic functions or disease susceptibility. And we often can't see this detail when we simply measure the physical performance traits, even some of the blood parameters. It doesn't give us this level of detail, what's actually going on at the metabolic side of the animal. As we get more and more information, as more research continues, we get these genetic databases going to be expanded, and as we start to include information from ASF affected animals, we can start to evolve into new areas for effective treatments, or start to select animals that have more robust ability to withstand disease. Certainly in the near term, before this is the longer term approach, but in the near term, we know that medication use is a key strategy for keeping herds healthy after repopulation from an ASF outbreak, and or treating animals during an ASF risk event. And the problem with that is that if we use and don't understand antimicrobial resistance, AMR, we may inadvertently increase this through medication use because we're trying to protect the animal for now. So it's a bit of a balancing act. We want to keep our animals healthy, but we also want to make sure that we can preserve those medications for the future. And what we know is that there's limited new medications in the pipeline, whether this is for human or animal, because bacteria become resistant to these antibiotic compounds within a very short time of being introduced into the market. Less than 1 year is, in some cases, new antibiotics have been developed, and before they even get released commercially, there's already resistance in the environment. And so what we've got to do is preserve the medications we currently have, because this is our last line of defense against diseases. And importantly, we need to monitor the patterns of resistomes, because once we know what the patterns are, we can then start to implement strategies to reduce the rate of AMR development, antimicrobial resistance, in our herds. And the question is often asked, can feed additives influence the resistome? Obviously, we don't want to make feed additives increase more resistance, and we want to make it better, of course, and we've got to be able to demonstrate that feed additives can positively influence the resistome. And here's a couple of quick studies just showing the effect in this particular case of an acidifier, looking at what happens when we feed an acidifier on E. coli, Salmonella, Lactobacilli, and Clostridium. And what we can see is that an acid can reduce the presence of E. coli and Salmonella, but stimulate the growth of the Lactobacilli, which is what we want to do in terms of favourable gut health, and also decrease the Clostridium, the gram-positive. So not only do we have, if we look at this graph at the bottom here, not only when we look at the colony forming units, we can see that the acid in the yellow and the control group in the blue, acids decrease the total amount of E. coli, but more importantly, when you subset out what the E. coli are that are resistant to various antibiotics, you can see that we also have a concomitant decrease in the amount of resistance genes that's present because of the use of the acidifier. So the take-home message here is that feeding acids, not only does it reduce total E. coli level, but also it reduces the level of E. coli resistant to antibiotics. And so again, it's a very important strategy in our overall antimicrobial resistant approaches. When we start looking at this next generation sequencing, and this is a study looking at the impact of a phytogenic in terms of the various resistomes and patterns of development of the microbiota. And we looked at fecal samples or gastrointestinal tract samples. We looked at day 8, day 0, day 8, and day 21. And again, there's a bit more detail in these graphs, but what it's really trying to show you is that when you look at the spread, and we look at this measure called alpha diversity, or a Shannon index, and this takes into account the abundance of the genes as well as the number of different compounds. And you can see that over time, compared to the control or even the antibiotic, the phytogenic has a lower number, which is a good thing, of genes coding for resistance compared to antibiotic feeding. Because when we feed antibiotics, we automatically increase the bacteria that will live, because they're the resistant ones, and they will carry a whole raft of different genes for resistance. And so the take-home message here is that feeding an antibiotic increases antibiotic resistance gene diversity, and this is bad because there's more genes available to develop more resistance, but feeding a phytogenic feed additive, a PFA, decrease the diversity of antibiotic resistance genes, and that's a good thing. Similarly, when we start to look at what is the impact of the phytogenic on the type of phylum, the type of families of bacteria, and this particular one on the left is day 8, and this is day 21, where we just fed control, an antibiotic or a phytogenic to pigs for 21 days. And again, we can start to see the pattern, and what these graphs show here is that it's the log fold change from 0. And so you want to promote the beneficial bacteria. The one down here is lactobacillus, so we get a positive improvement in the lactobacillus by day 8, and we can also start to decrease some of the less productive bacteria, the pathogenic ones. And again, the similar sort of pattern at day 21. So again, this is just to highlight the importance of how next generation sequencing can really give us an underlying understanding of what's going on, not just measuring feed conversion rate, growth rate, feed efficiency, or even diarrhea score. It gives us a lot more detail. And what we can see is that feeding phytogenic feed additives positively influences the composition of the microbiome. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this brief talk has given you an understanding of the mechanisms leading to antimicrobial resistance patterns and why it's important that we have an understanding of this so we can actually manage effectively our AMR, our antimicrobial resistance, and the development of antibiotics. Next generation sequencing techniques allows a more complete understanding of the resistomes, or this resistance development, than previous techniques, and becomes really powerful in our attempts to manage the use of antibiotics. While it's still a little bit in the research environment because of cost and the laboratories, the implementation at the farm level of next generation sequencing will soon become commonplace. Already we can take samples from a farm and we can send them to the various laboratories based in Europe and do the analysis. It's still a bit complicated, a bit slow, but soon it will be available in most universities, most commercial laboratories, and so we can start doing it in country. And once we get to this level and the cost comes down, the ability to use NGS will facilitate practitioners to effectively identify and monitor their efforts to manage antimicrobial resistance and start becoming more strategic about the way antimicrobials are used. As medication strategies become an important part of herd health to reduce the impacts of ASF, I believe it is vital that the effectiveness of the medications are preserved. We have to maintain animal health now and welfare, but we've also got to be strategic to ensure that we're not overusing our medications now and they won't become effective in the coming years. And there's a lot of evidence already emerging that feed additives are effective in reducing AMR in swine as well as poultry. And thank you very much for your attention. Hopefully this has given you a bit of an insight into the advantage of the next generation sequencing. Happy to take any questions.
The overuse and misuse of antibiotics in animal farming and human medicine is leading to antimicrobial resistance, or AMR. AMR is flagged as one of the major issues for humanity, and unless tackled, it will become the single leading cause of death worldwide by 2050. Animal farming uses a significant amount of the world's antibiotics that are deemed medically important for human health. Much of this use is for antibiotic growth promotion and prophylaxis. At DSM, we advocate the replacement of antibiotic growth promoters and limiting the need for their prophylactic use in animal farming, thereby helping reduce the prevalence of AMR. We've done this by working closely with our customers over many years to develop a suite of nutritional ingredients that help improve the gut health of animals. For example, our novel enzyme technology, Balancius, breaks down bacterial cell debris in the gut, material that is commonly found in all animals, leading to more efficient use of feed and improved animal health. Whereas swine farmers routinely use our Vivo Vital solution to ensure a more favorable gut microflora balance and reduce digestive disorders. With our nutrition and health solutions, we are leading the way in limiting the prevalence of antimicrobial resistance. If not us, who? If not now, when? We make it possible.
Thank you, Dr. Gannon, and thank you, Biomin, for this presentation. We agree that newer technologies are valuable to our pig production, more so with ASF in our midst, like this NGS or next generation sequencing, as we still have a lot of bacterial infection present in our farms. And of course, medication are valuable in our production. We hope you are still glued to your gadget or laptop or phone while waiting for this program to end. You may still send in your questions so that we could ask them from our speakers. Our last topic for today will be presented by MSD to discuss recent technologies that are now available for our local industry in terms of swine vaccination. Please watch this.
Our next speaker is a graduate of Bachelor of Veterinary Science in Melbourne University, Australia, and Masters in Veterinary Epidemiology and Public Health at the Royal Veterinary College, United Kingdom. He was a food safety veterinarian with the Quarantine and Inspection Group, Agri-Food, and Veterinary Agency in Singapore. Moreover, he practiced swine veterinary medicine with Appium Animal Health in Australia. He joined MSD Animal Health as technical director for swine, covering Asia Pacific and Sub-Saharan Africa. Please all welcome Dr. Hong Yao Lin.
Hello everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present to your conference. My topic today is applying precision agriculture to swine farming. Today, I will be covering the following topics. First, we will examine how precision livestock farming can be used to solve the challenges of modern livestock production. Next, because it is really important to understand the technologies behind precision livestock farming, or PLF, I will go through in depth what is available currently. The field of PLF in swine is fairly immature compared to other species. So I will give some examples of PLF technology applied to intensive livestock production in other species. In today's world, climate change and globalization will cause new diseases to appear in regions where they never existed before. One case in point is ASF. Urbanization is driving people into cities and making it challenging for new farms to be built in many areas. Urbanization also drives social issues where farms are unable to recruit young talented workers who have moved away from rural areas into the cities. Where is the logical conclusion of this then? Well, producers and veterinarians will thus have to balance the dichotomy of ever-increasing intensification of production in order to produce with lesser land with animal health, which worsens with intensification. Labor costs are increasing, and the challenge thus becomes, how can we manage animal health in a situation where we are putting ever larger numbers of animals into our farms? The solution here thus becomes adding in automation or precision livestock farming. This will allow the monitoring of individual animals at scale, increasing the productivity of each worker. It will allow a small group of skilled individuals to manage a large number of animals and maintain their health and well-being. So this effectively helps us to solve the above outlined problem of the conflicts between intensification and animal health. What does the future look like on swine farms with PLF? In the very near future, the precision livestock farming system is an automated weighing station where pigs must pass through to get to feed and water. There are sensors connected over the water and the feed trough, and then the pigs are not driven in any way. They move freely as they like over the weighing station to get to the feed and to the water. So whenever an animal walks over the weighing platform, the sensors will determine its weight, and then this information will go to what we call the field box, which is a processing unit located in the field, and the data will then be sent via the antennas to the farm box in the farm office. And then this farm box will then process the information and communicate with the cloud and convert raw data from the field into performance indicators. Every animal will carry a unique identifier to identify it. And then information from the drinkers and the feeders will be integrated with the weight curve. So the system is in effect more than just a weighing machine. What matters to us is the smart technology involved in monitoring the animal's weight, feeding, and drinking. And then this system will also be able to tell us how many animals are there in the pen. And each animal's weight, feed, and water consumption will be combined and analyzed to tell us if the animal is healthy. The system will take in 3 different data inputs here and decide if the animal is unwell, and then automatically alert the producer. So the magic here is in the algorithms that are able to put all of these 3 inputs here, feeding, drinking, and weight curve, together into one package, and then automatically make a decision and alert the veterinarian if there's a problem. What happens to humans then? Will there ever come a point where the machines become better than us at doing the job and take over our jobs? And do we all become then redundant? And the answer is a firm no. We can take the example of many other situations where machines and AI are starting to operate with humans. For example, if we look at fighter pilots, they deal with a large, overwhelming mass of data coming into them during their job, and then AI is being explored not to replace them but to augment them and let them focus on the critical tasks. In the same way, modern pig farming, especially the management of large numbers of animals, generates a lot of data. So much data that an ordinary human cannot make sense of it all. So PLF will be another tool in the arsenal of the veterinarian and the producer to help them make sense of the data. PLF will augment the human will remain firmly in the picture and the final presser of the button, or the final decision maker. And effectively, PLF and the human will form a team to manage the animal. What about the vets in the audience then? Where do we fit into this? Let's see. And we should see PLF as another tool in our arsenal, just like a stethoscope or a thermometer. And just as we need these tools to make an informed clinical diagnosis, PLF will help us come to the most accurate diagnosis by taking into account all these data points and synthesizing them into an output that we can make sense of. And so by doing so, we will be able to remotely monitor large groups of animals, perhaps without even being physically present on the farm, and thus improving farm biosecurity. So it's important for swine veterinarians to understand all these technologies that will enable this and how they fit together. Okay, now I'll briefly cover the technologies behind precision livestock farming. And to start, we should look at it from the point of view of this triangle. We should understand that precision livestock farming forms a pyramid, and each level is built on the previous level. So at the base, we have identification. We need to be able to identify the animals throughout their entire lifespan. The pig environment, as you know, is very harsh. Whatever identifier we use needs to stay on the animals through to slaughter, especially if we want to identify finisher pigs. Next, we can build upon that to reach the next level, which is collecting data in the field with different kinds of sensors and making sense of the data from these sensors. We then tie the data from the sensors to individual animals. And we build on these two tiers. We reach tier 3, which is full traceability of pork from identification and monitoring of pigs. Okay, let's understand a little bit about what technologies allow for animal identification, which will form the base of our pyramid. So there are three main ones here. The first one is radio frequency identification. Radio frequency identification, using the radio wave of low, high, or ultra high frequency. This is the medium of communication between the transponder within the tag and an RFID reader. So when the RFID tag comes into range of a reader, it will receive a signal. And then a second radio frequency signal will be induced, carrying data that will travel to the reader. So there's two kinds. There's both passive and active tags. And for our purposes, because these are usually implanted into animals, we usually use passive RFID tags which do not carry a power source. Power sources pose a risk to the surrounding tissue when they are implanted in. And then for passive tags, instead they rely on the reader sending a signal to the tag, which is then converted into electrical energy, and then they respond to it. Optical character recognition is a form of machine vision where a computer can recognize an image. So depending on the clarity and the color of the markings, there's the capacity to identify large permutations of animals, and with the exception of optical character recognition on tags, identification may not need to be removed from pigs before slaughter. But when the characters are painted on the pigs, it becomes a bit tricky because visual identifications can fade within a day, and then when the pigs lie down close to one another, the system needs to overcome the shadows cast. So there's some limitations here if the characters are painted onto the pigs. How about facial recognition? Facial recognition is commonly used in many applications today. You may be familiar with some of them on your mobile phones, and it's starting to bleed into animal health as well. So in this study here by WADA, they examined frontal photos from 10 pigs and achieved 77% recognition from the full face and 97.9% when the reading was focused only on the eyes. Okay, so Hansen used digital photos taken from a camera mounted on a water drinker and developed a program that differentiated 10 pigs with 96.7% accuracy. The algorithm that Hansen used recognized pigs from three regions: the snout, the wrinkles above the snout, and the prevalent markings at the top of the head and the eye. So this technology is promising due to the speed of recognition and the application of human facial recognition algorithms for pig faces. Okay, now let's look at sensors, which will help us in achieving the monitoring aspect of the pyramid, or the second level. And due to the depth of what's available in the field, I will only touch briefly on 4 areas of monitoring. So first, let's look at cameras. Cameras basically use image analysis. Image analysis translates the acquired images into animal location and proximity and activity. So imaging in pigs has been used to estimate pig weight, aggression, walking, sow posture, behavior during lactation. Image analysis has been done, research in the past has been using two-dimensional cameras. and then this provided digital information that the researchers could analyze the above parameters. However, 2D sensors do have a limitation. They require adequate lighting and a contrasting background, like a white pig on dark cement. So three-dimensional cameras have an additional feature called a time of flight depth sensor. This and also infrared illuminator. So infrared is important during low lighting or when we observe nocturnal behavior, which is really important, for example, for sound observing sounds. And then time of flight depth technology sends a pulse of infrared light from LED multiple times a second, and then records the delay between the pulse and the return to each pixel. So depth-based cameras are advantageous due to a low cost, and they can handle large data sets, they have low power requirement, and furthermore, they can distinguish where the pig is in relation to the camera. The problem with current 3D cameras that require sort of a retrofitted cover to protect the sensors from environmental assaults that are common in a pig farm, like ammonia, moisture, dust, and insects. Okay, and we have microphones. So microphones are relatively simple. They convert noises into electrical signals that can be processed in computers with the intent of detecting, classifying, and localizing specific acoustic events such as indications of stress or illness. For example, you may hear high-frequency calls of pigs, and these have been linked to stressful situations. Coughs can be linked to respiratory disease. So with the implementation of sensor technology, microphones and vocalizations could become an automatic daily measurement. Thermistors and temperature logging. So temperature monitors use a contact measuring media. So this is a thermistor. A thermistor can be embedded in a data logger or ear tag sensor, and it requires direct contact with the tissue, and they provide a highly accurate reading, accurate to 0.1 degrees Celsius. However, if we use infrared imaging technology, then we do not require any contact with the animal and we can have remote measuring. However, if we use remote imaging, then we need to know that there are some constraints of this. The peripheral temperature readings depend on the many other factors and differ from the core temperature. In a higher ambient temperature, for example, the thermoregulation will direct increased blood flow to the skin tissue, resulting in higher surface temperatures. In older pigs, fat will insulate the body core, and then at low ambient temperatures, skin temperatures are lower. So surface areas such as the tissue behind the ear or mammary tissue have no hair or insulation, and they better reflect an adult pig's core body temperature. And whereas due to their lack of body fat and insulation, the skin temperature of newborn piglets is a very accurate thermal window to their core temperature. This is different for older piglets where they have where more hair and fat covers the surface of the body. How about accelerometers? So accelerometers are among one of the most promising technologies for monitoring livestock behavior. They're becoming very cheaply available nowadays thanks to spin-off from the gaming industry. So here is an accelerometer circled here in an Xbox controller. An accelerometer is an electromechanical device used to measure accelerating forces. So the forces can be static. For example, if the pig is lying down, or they can measure when the animal is walking, and they can detect acceleration due to movement. Movement will generate a stress on microscopic crystals housed within the accelerometer, and this will create voltage. The sensors will then interpret the voltage to determine the velocity of the movement and orientation of the movement. Many newer accelerometers are triaxial, so that they can accumulate three-dimensional movement in the X, Y, and Z plane, and they measure the Earth's gravitational pull by determining the angle at which the device is tilted, in addition to measuring acceleration forces. So they can tell the orientation of the tag as well. So let's come to algorithms then. All of the data generated from identification and monitoring has to be collected, and you have to apply a sense-making process to turn the inputs into usable outputs. So this is achieved through the process of algorithms. So what is an algorithm? It's like a cooking recipe. So in our cooking recipe, we put some ingredients in, and these are the inputs. And then in our process, in our monitoring and identification process, the inputs are the amount of feed the pig is eating, the water consumed, the weight, the body temperature, and so on and so forth. After that, the computer will run through a series of decision-making steps, analyzing these inputs before coming to an output. And in a baking recipe, like here, the output is the brownie. And in our process, precision livestock farming, the output is a decision that this particular animal is categorized as normal or unwell. And then after that, the algorithm can also further make a decision to warn the producer automatically. So what is machine learning? How do we train the algorithm to collect all the inputs, make sense of them, and turn them into outputs? So we use machine learning for this. So this is the magic formula that turns just a simple electronic weighing system or electronic feed monitoring system into a precision livestock farming system. In machine learning, the algorithms can train themselves over time to improve their accuracy using data fed into the system by programmers. There are three kinds of machine learning: supervised, reinforcement, and unsupervised. So today's algorithms are trained on large supervised data sets. So it means that for each piece of data, there's a label. You have to attach a label to the data set and then train the algorithm that way. So in some data sets, there's over 1 million images manually labeled by humans. And obviously, as you can imagine, it takes a lot of effort to create such a data set. It takes many, many months of work. Now imagine creating a data set with data coming from a swine farm, which may be in the millions per week. So this is not scalable. And then think about how when you were young, when you were trained, you got some supervision, but when your parents told you that, and when they pointed to a cat and said that this was a cat, they would not need to tell you that this was a cat every split second while you were looking at a cat for the rest of your life. So that is where supervised machine learning is today. We tell the algorithm over and over what a cat is, and then the machine learning model finally understands it after about 1 million times of being told what a cat is. So the holy grail here, where we want to get to, is unsupervised learning, when algorithm can fully autonomously learn with very little data and very little reinforcement, so just like a human being. Okay, so let's look at some examples of PLF technology applied across intensive farming. Due to the proprietary nature of many of the solutions that Allflex can offer and customer confidentiality, I cannot give you specific examples apart from what is in the public domain. However, please contact us if you have specific requests, and we will be very happy to offer you a solutions package. First, let's take a look at the solution offerings by Allflex in the dairy cattle market. Why do we use the dairy cattle market? This is the most mature intensive livestock monitoring area that is applying precision livestock farming currently. Allflex is able to offer health monitoring, reproduction monitoring, and group monitoring across the world using our proprietary identification and monitoring technologies. So here are some testimonials from satisfied dairy customers in Australia, where the technology is being deployed at a very large commercial scale. Of the most interest to the swine producers in the audience is the automated heat detecting software. This allows producers to be notified in the dairy setting of when a cow is coming into heat and optimize the right time to mate the cow. Allflex livestock intelligence reproduction monitoring applications take away the guesswork and inconsistency of evaluating the reproductive status of every individual heifer and cow. The applications empower dairy farmers to optimize conception rates while reducing skilled labor requirements and saving time. They leverage behavior monitoring based on activity, rumination, eating, and other proprietary cow behaviors. The reproduction monitoring applications can provide very accurate heat detection, including the detection of weak heat signs, which is also applicable in swine farming in the gilts, while minimizing false positives. So they will deliver actionable insight in real time with precise insemination timing guidance. So using these applications at a commercial scale, dairy farmers have reduced the calving interval, the dependency on reproductive hormones, and then with fewer empty days, the farmers can improve milk production as well as the genetic quality of their herd. So all this is available currently at commercial scale for the dairy industry and is very soon available for the swine industry as well. Please discuss with us if you have interest over here. Next, we come to more direct swine applications. Here, the MSD EDAL device can be paired with our proprietary EDAL Way app. This is available on the App Store. And then by doing this, the producers can monitor the vaccinations that are being given to a batch of animals in real time using the app and the EDAL device. And then they can ensure that the correct numbers of animals are being vaccinated with the correct vaccine, and all in real time from the comfort of their offices. Next, we come to the Bee Secure system. This was developed in conjunction with MSD Animal Health and PigChamp Pro Europa. And this is an example of a 900 sow multiplier which was PRRS positive in the farrowing, nursery, and gilt areas. This system utilizes Bluetooth to track worker movements on the farm. So in conjunction with the classification system of high risk, medium risk, and low risk areas, this system will then automatically analyze PRRS risk and produces a warning to the producer if the risk of an outbreak is increasing from risky worker movements. So in this example here, we were able to predict a PRRS outbreak in advance due to an increase in risky movements of workers from high-risk contaminated areas to clean areas. Subsequently, by using this knowledge to improve worker movements, the PRRS prevalence in the farrowing units and the nursery dropped, and this proved a direct link between worker movement management and PRRS control. And in this study here, this study was able to predict an outbreak of tail biting using image capture analysis 1 week before an outbreak of tail biting. So let's think about what's involved here. The system needed to capture the images of the pig, and then they needed to recognize where the tail was, and they needed to determine the tail position, high or low position, and then they needed to evaluate whether there were changes in posture, all of the while accounting for variable light conditions, feces, different environments and surfaces, varying ages and sizes, overlapping and moving animals. So very, very difficult, but they managed to overcome it and in the end predict outbreaks of tail biting 1 week before the actual tail biting incident. How about automated sick piglet detection? So ear bases here, as mentioned previously, are considered the thermal windows to a piglet. They can accurately tell us remotely what the body temperature is, and temperature variation in piglet ear bases can be used as an indicator of a piglet's health status. But the piglet skin temperatures in thermal windows are obtained manually from infrared thermal images captured by thermography. This is what is done in most farms. So this is very inefficient. This is an obstacle to automatic detection. So an algorithm was used here, and then the comparison images showed that for the left and the right ear base, 97 and 98% of the images were accurate, and the system was able to automatically detect animals that had a fever. Again, let's think about what happened here. Our system needs to capture images, recognize where the ear is, take the temperature from the ear, and evaluate and warn the producer if the piglet has a fever. Again, dealing with the variable light conditions, fecal contamination on the floor, different environments, varying ages and sizes, overlapping and moving animals. So again, many obstacles to be overcome that were overcome, and the end result is a system that was able to accurately read at ear temperature and alert the producer if the piglet had a fever. So I conclude here. Precision livestock farming is a tool for producers and veterinarians to manage large groups of intensively raised animals. There are many options available for customization, and scalable technologies are already being applied in the field, and the future is certainly bright here. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Here at MSD Animal Health, we are constantly looking for ways to improve and innovate. Traditional vaccination procedures may result in stress to the animal. The market demanded a new way of vaccinating, a safer, more compliant, less stressful alternative for the animal. So, in response, in 2001, we created IDAL MSD Animal Health's pioneering needle-free intradermal vaccination system. Since then, we've constantly improved and enhanced the IDAL Way family by adding innovative vaccines and modern vaccine delivery devices, and new firsts. We have continually evolved our technical innovation. In response to IDAL users' feedback, we have further developed the vaccine delivery device to be more user-friendly. Let me introduce to you the IDAL device. It has been redesigned to be more ergonomic, thus improving ease of use. The result is the IDAL 3G and 3G Twin, the latest innovation in the IDAL Way family. Innovation starts by listening to our customers. But you don't have to believe me.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon. I would like to ask few questions about IDAL. Sure, go ahead. What made you decide to use IDAL in the farm?
We decided to use IDAL in the farm because it's so easy to use and it causes less stress to our pigs and to our employees.
How is your experience using IDAL in the field?
Compared to our traditional intramuscular vaccination, it's very easy to use, as I said, and it would cost less time and it would cost less money.
Yes, would you recommend IDAL to use in the other pig farmers?
Yes, I would highly recommend it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mayroon ng 2 years ako nag-start. Since nag-start, in 2018 ako nag-start. So, more than 2 years na. Yung nakita na ko kasi una kong ginamit doon is PCV and Mycoplasma. So, yung nagamit namin PCV Mycoplasma, nakita namin yung ease of doing vaccination. And since vet naman ako, nakikita ko yung importance ng needleless, yung disease transfer from one individual to another, one pig to another. So, yung nakita ko yung technology ng IDAL, sabi ko gusto ko to. So, yung na-introduce na dito sa Philippines, isa ako sa mga talagang, ako pa yung naghanap sa kanila. Gusto kong gamitin. Since mga technician namin yung gumagamit yan, ang reaction nila is mabilis. Mabilis mag-vaccinate compared to IM. And isa lang ang complaint naman nila sa sobrang bilis, napapagod daw sila sa kakabuhat. Pero sa ease of doing vaccination, mabilis talaga sila. And multiple na vaccines, nagagamit namin na isang machine lang, isang IDAL machine.
So it's safer for users, less stressful for animals, and with a complete unique portfolio of efficacious vaccines specifically designed to be used intradermally. This is the IDAL way. Now with IDAL 3G and IDAL 3G Twin, the real breakthrough in intradermal vaccination. The future is needle-free, and the future is now.
Okay, thank you for that, MSD and Dr. Hong Lin. It's very informative. So reminders for everyone, how to earn CPD units. Please make sure to accomplish the evaluation forms that will be sent to your phone through SMS or to your email. So please don't forget that. So now we have our speakers together. Thank you very much, everyone. It was really a very good presentation and topics. I think we did a lot of notes at our end, and the information is actually overloading. So with that, I will be asking each one of you on the first round for questions, and then after that, we will have I will be calling each one depending on the questions that we have received. So reminders again for our participants, please don't forget to send in your questions. You still have time, so send them in now. So for the first question, Dr. Q, this is for you. If a farm has been infected with ASF and the herd has been stomped out, what are your recommendations for treating water sources, lagoons, and mortality pits where the animals have been dumped?
Hello, can you hear me? Thank you. Yeah, the water, the ASFA can keep alive in the water for a long time. So the water sources and drinking water lines should be disinfected normally. In some farms, will transport the feces and waters from lagoons to other places and burn the dead pigs. But normally, because if we transport the lagoon, the feces to the other places, can lead to the more contamination. So we normally ask the workers keep away from the lagoon and the mortality pigs because the ASFA will die in 30 days in lagoons at room temperature. It's my answer.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Raymond. I hope we answered the question of the one of the participant. Let me go to Dr. Abraham Villanueva. Of course, we know that we are dealing with Filipino farmers, and how can you help convince farmers to do this monitoring as well as the validation of their farm protocols and programs? Doc? Thank you, thank you. Mark? Na-excite tuloy ang ating mga farmers to hear the answer of Doc Abe. How do we convince them, Doc? Okay, I'll go back to you, Doc Abe. It's okay? Is it okay? So let me call on Dr. Kanoy. Doc Donan, we know, there's a question on playing with hormones or using that can have adverse effect on the normal physiological functions of the sow. Can you discuss it in a short way? What are these possible effects of the hormone if we use them in underdose or overdosed way? Volume, please. Okay, Doc. Are you with us now with your sound? Okay, Doc, I will go back to you. Kindly fix the volume as well. So let me call on Dr. Neil Gannon. Thank you for your presentation. There's a question on the use of NGS is indeed a level up, and resistance of microbiome is a more comprehensive approach. How does this test help the veterinarians choose the correct antibiotic to treat disease or diseases in the farm?
Thank you for the question. The issue is really this is not a diagnostic tool. It's more as a screening tool to look at what changes are happening over time. So at the moment, we still have to use the current sensitivity testing to know what antibiotic to use now. But it's part of the overall farm approach to start to monitor on a quarterly, 6-monthly, annual basis and see what happens to our resistome over time. and certainly evidence from Denmark, where they've been phased out of antibiotics for many years now, we can actually see that the level of resistance is significantly dropped once we stop using antibiotics. So this is the tool to help us understand that, rather than looking at a specific antibiotic resistance within a particular species of bug that we're trying to treat at the farm level.
Yeah, thank you for that answer, Dr. Ganon. Of course, we in the Philippines is still a long way. We're starting up on this AMR, a lot of info dissemination so that we at the farm level would fully understand the responsibility as well. So let me go now to Dr. Hong. Okay, hi there.
Hello.
Modernization in swine farming is really the trend. But can you elaborate on how it can be of benefit on improving farm production efficiencies and how it can help in achieving the farm KPIs or key performance indicators from birth to market or even to carcass performances?
Okay, thank you for the question. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay, great.
your sound is
Yeah,
good. Thank you.
okay, so in such a situation, one specific use case here is to be able to monitor the pigs from birth to the slaughter and to be able to correlate, for example, the raising conditions with metrics like carcass yield. So, for example, we know that during the raising of hogs, for example, a respiratory disease outbreak or feed outage may have a downstream impact on the carcass yield. So currently, we receive this information retroactively from the slaughterhouse, and it's too late to do anything if we have a problem. So we can imagine a day when a producer can receive automated predictions if a batch of hogs is going to be too lean or too fat at slaughter, even while they are being raised, even before they reach the slaughterhouse. For that, there's some prerequisites that need to happen in terms of the technology. Fortunately, most of these are already fulfilled. So, for example, the first milestone is that we need to have identification that can survive on the pig from birth to slaughter and even into the slaughterhouse past the flaming and the water bath. So this is actually possible already. Then, of course, the next is that we need a big enough data set that allows us to predict the performance of the future based on the past. And this is also accomplished already. So I guess that's an example there of one use case there that might be useful for hog producers.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. It's really look exciting ahead of time for us here in the Philippines that a lot of technologies are already available, and surely with the repopulation efforts, we can also start using or trying them one by one. Thank you for that. Are the other speakers already good with their sound? Okay, Doc Abe, are you there? Oh, nice to see you again, Doc. Thank you for waiting.
Doc,
So
okay na po
I'll
yung
ask you again. Yeah. Your answer will be how to convince the farmers to do their monitoring and validation of their programs.
Thanks for the question, Doc Etens. No? Basically, when we talk with the, especially Filipino farmers, we can actually persuade them using our credibility through our emotions, through their emotions, and we can appeal to them as well through logic. But again, as part of our SGS approach, ongoing and continuous campaign, no? So hindi po siya natatapos. Through roundtable discussions being done by our sector in SGS, again, as collaboratively working with the government and as well as the private sectors to really boost the confidence of the Filipino farmers in repopulating. No? So we are now in the time of scientific innovation, and every approach is guided objectively. So what we have learned from the past may be mistakes or deficiencies, we correct it and make it better. But again, there's a catch, no? We make it better continuously. So yun lang po. Thank you.
Tama, Doc. I fully agree on having it done, having it initiated at the farm, and also doing it consistently. I think that's the key. Tapos, I can make a follow-up question, Doc Abe? Is it okay? So
Yes,
while
Doc.
you're
Yes,
still
Doc.
on
Let's go.
at the
Focus ako.
focus of the what is the success rate of the farms handled by SGS service package in terms of repopulation? So at least to give confidence to those people listening to us today.
That's a very good question, Doc Etens. As SGS, we go by the tagline of when you need to be sure. So as of now, we are already on a still maintaining 100% success rate of all farms. But the most important question is the how. No, the how. How can the farms who already repopulated maintain its African swine fever free status, while we are still waiting for a much more tangible solution, which is an ASF vaccine.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. So let me continue while you're still there. Okay ka lang, Doc Abe? I have
Yes,
a
Doc.
lot. They're listening. Our participants are actively listening and sending in their question. Thank you for all those questions. Doc Abe, again, how long will be the farm assessment done? And when can you say that it is time to increase the sow population after the Sentinel program?
As shared earlier at our presentation, Doc Etens, the farm audit by SGS as a third-party auditor is made up of 4 stages. Initially, it can be done during a week's time. And of course, by
Mm-hmm.
performing a pre-sentinel assessment, as we recommended earlier
Mm-hmm.
during the presentation, pre-sentinel assessment and the sentinel program, and then from there, you can go step by step in increasing your population. Some farms may opt to repopulate 30 or around 50% of their maximum farm or original farm population. But this is more on the how, How confident are you to repopulate, So, in increasing your population. How can you be sure that you can maintain an African swine fever-free environment all throughout, This is where
Mm-hmm.
the principle of biosecurity audit comes in, Biosecurity audit, monitoring, and surveillance, So I think that's answers the question, Doc Etens.
Yes, Doc. Very clear. I will get back to you in a little while. I will ask question as well to Doc Raymond. Are you there?
Yes, 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 I can
Dr.
hear you.
Raymond? Yes, I have
Can you
another
hear me?
question for you. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The question is, what are the expected long-term effects of using disinfectants in humans due to repeated exposures?
What? Sorry. Can
Okay.
you repeat the
Of
question?
course, yeah, okay. Of course, we know that disinfections are regularly used in the farms by our people
Yes,
working in the farms. So, what are
yes.
the expected long term effects of using these disinfectants in humans due to these repeated exposures?
Yes, it's a bigger challenge. Some people's skin is allergic to the disinfectant after several times experience. Based on my experience, including me, normally after 2 or 3 times, my skin will be allergic. But after several times, the skin will become better, but it is still a question. But we have no better uh, method to disinfect the ASFA after we expose to the infected pigs. Is the reason we disinfect the skin, use a disinfectant.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree. Yeah, thank you for that answer. I have a follow up question. Um, okay. For the outsourced semen, what measures do you observe to monitor bore stations for ASF?
Both station.
For say
Uh,
for a farm using outsourced semen or buying
yes,
semen from bore stations outside their facilities, what measures should they observe in order to monitor their supplier of semen for ASF, of
yes.
course?
It's a very good question. Uh, yes, there are some cases the ball station is infected, was infected. Then they distribute their semen to the other farms. The other farms will be infected. But in China, after the ASFA, only big companies or big ball stud is selling cement because the ball stud must make sure the balls and cement is ASFA free. The ball normally the ball stud takes samples from the service balls, uh, including the oral fluid or the semen every day, and do the qPCR and make sure the ASFA the semen is ASFA free, then distribute to the other farms.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is
Thank you for that question. Yeah. So I think in a short answer, there should be trust in our bore semen supplier or the semen laboratory supplying semen to our customers here in the Philippines. Thank you for that. I'll get back to you in a little while. Let me call on Dr. Kanoy. I hope you are here. I will
Yes.
repeat the question.
Yeah.
You
Please,
know, that's
thank
the
you.
difficulty of having this online, but of course, we have to persevere.
Okay.
Okay, the question is, I will repeat the question. The question is, using or playing with these hormones can have adverse effect on the normal physiological function of the sows. Can you discuss what are these possible effects of the hormone that you have discussed if being used underdose or dosage? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. First, when we use external hormones, these are external because this is already intrinsic in the body. So when we use external hormones, we have a specific purpose. One is especially what I discussed is the altrenoges. The altrenoges inhibits the occurrence of estrus. And then when you withdraw, then the process of estrus will occur again. So that is very specific. And again, when you use external hormones, there are withdrawal periods, withdrawal days. So, meaning when you use this hormone, after 9 to 10 days, basically the external hormones are already gone. It's already excreted. Now, when we use the hormones carelessly or without purpose, the bad effect specifically for altrenoges is the induction of cystic ovary. Okay, so you destroy
Mhm.
the ovary of the animal because you stop the estrus and then especially on the process of 18 days treatment. Example, when you are on day 10 and you forget to continue or you are to stop, did not continue the day, and then he will follow up the day 11 and day 12. It
Mhm.
is bad when you miss a day for the 18 days. You should stop because when you try to to complete the cycle, maybe you will be inducing a cystic ovary on the ovary of the animals, and it will destroy the animal. So that is the wrong
Yeah.
usage. So stick to the plan, stick to the schedule. That is the process. Okay.
Yeah, that's the right
As I
way to
said,
do it.
uh,
Yeah.
and as I said in the discussion, 95% success rate can be achieved only if it is applied correctly. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's also a responsibility for all, not just for the veterinarians, also for the managers, and more so in training our people at the farm how to do it right. So I will have a follow-up question because na-miss ka namin ng slide. So how much is the total cost of treatment per sow? And what is the expected return in efficiencies in terms of farrowing rate, piglets born alive, and weaning weight uniformity?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Now, first, what is the cost? Maybe we can ask our marketing vets for the cost. So maybe you can ask our area managers for the cost because basically I'm not aware. Okay. Second is what is the efficiency?
In terms of
95%
the
success rate.
performance, yes.
Yes. We're talking of guilds because of ultrasound issues. Oh, sorry, Altrenoges issues on guilds. Okay. So this is 95% success rate. Actually, today we can receive up to 98% success rate. Synchronization and breeding. Now, in terms of farrowing, piglets produce. Okay, it is claimed, okay, in the technical papers that is one piglet is added to whatever is the number of piglets produced by the
Yeah.
animals. So
Yeah.
that's
That's
the yeah, that's the result.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Doc. So that's those are nice questions straight from the farmers. So let me call on Dr. Ganon. There's another question for you, Dr. Neil. Hi there again. How are you doing? Okay, follow-up question. Since NGS is not yet a standard approach to measuring AMR, what is the benefit of looking at the resistance levels of the microbiome scale versus that of a pure culture or one bacteria isolation, then resistance testing?
Yeah, another very good question, and thank you for that person that asked it. The advantage of NGS is really, and I expect the Philippine government will start to look at this, because it's really about surveillance. What are we doing as an industry, whether that's animal, human, or companion? What are we doing in terms of reducing our levels of antimicrobial resistance over time? So it's really it's a holistic opportunity. It can be used at the farm level through doing analysis on a quarterly, 6-monthly, annual basis to help the veterinarians and the managers understand the tracking down. But because it looks at all the resistance patterns, and there's so many different resistance genes within a microbial population, that just focusing on a single bacterium, an E. coli or a salmonella, is not really giving us that big picture, because these plasmids, as I mentioned briefly in my talk, these plasmids contain the resistance genes, and they can jump between different bacteria. So if we only focus on the use of an antibiotic in a single bacterium and don't look at what resistance that's inducing, that other bugs in that community on that farm will become resistant to that bacteria, to that antibiotic, because of these plasmid jumping. So this is why NGS is really a vital tool, and the governments, universities around the world are looking at this aspect, is look at the trends over time, which you cannot pick up just by doing single bacterium and looking at the resistance within a single bacterium. We're trying to look at eliminating resistance genes in a whole community, not just eliminating a particular bacterium. So it's more of a holistic nature. Each of the methodologies has their place, and as I mentioned with the previous question, the speed that you can get a turnaround and know what antibiotic to use in a farm when there's a raging problem, that's great for here and now. But over time, if you keep using that antibiotic, you'll start to develop resistance on your farm in a whole number of areas. And we want to be able to manage that and make sure we're making our antibiotics last for as long as possible. through strategic use. And whether that's water use in the weaners and not using antibiotics in the growers' finishes, because many of the other metrics that are starting to be used now is looking at the milligrams of antibiotic used per kilogram of meat produced, not how many doses you give per year or how many kilograms, but where you're strategically using that. And so resistome analysis, this next generation sequences, helps many farmers now identify how they can reduce the milligrams of antibiotic used per kilogram of meat produced per year.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, Dr. Gannon. So I will have last two questions. I think some of the questions we cannot discuss today, but we will be sending it out to our speakers so that we can reply to them in our website. So the second to the last question, may we call on Dr. Hong? Thank you, Dr. Gannon. Okay, of course, we want to understand. The Filipino farmer would want to understand in this precision farming and, newer technologies, what level of swine operation where we can start this full automation technology that our backyard farmers or the small stakeholders that we have a lot here can avail of. Like how many sow levels will that be?
Okay, thank you for the question. The good thing about all these technologies is that they scale, and the more users that are on them, the more they scale. Even when you are not using the technology, but your neighboring large farms use them, then you benefit from the decreased cost as well, and eventually they become cost effective enough for backyard farmers to use. Right now, we are confident that up to the 300, 400 sow level operation, it will be cost effective, adding probably cents on the pig to implement monitoring systems. Going lower than that may be a challenge at the moment, and we continue to refine it. But yes, I mean, the goal is to have that sort of data set built up. And then, of course, the apart from the cost of it, the other thing for consideration is the predictability, because the algorithms will probably be built for industrialized farming. Backyard farms may use different housing systems, for example. So those algorithms will have to be reconfigured for backyard housing. And that's also a process. So first of all, the identification, that's probably coming soon. And then for the monitoring side of things, then that will probably need to be reconfigured. Yeah, but at least the identification should be catching up quite soon in terms of cost. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the best way to do it is start one at a time and see how effective it will be. And then as we move forward, getting more sows into production, probably it will make sense to increase and add more those newer generation equipments or precision farming. So thank you for that answer, Dr. Lin. I think I have the last question for Dr. Raymond. Dr. Raymond,
Yeah.
nice to see
Can
you
you hear me?
again. Yes,
Yes.
I'm good. Thank you. The last question will be yours. Okay. What do you think is the primary reason why the test and removal fail? And what are the most common mistakes that has been done? Or for those, what are the lacking items or things that cause the failure as well?
The question is the cost increase in the
No,
production,
it's
is right? Sorry.
what is the primary reason why the test and removal failed, the program, the test
Oh,
and the
okay, okay,
removal?
okay, yeah, I know.
And what are the common
Okay,
mistakes that has been
yes,
done? And also what could be the
okay,
lacking procedure
okay,
that caused the
okay,
failure?
I know. Yes. After normally we take 6 months to find the testing and the removal strategy. The testing and the removal is very, very important and very important to China pig industry. For main reasons is frequently, I think. The first is the infected pigs was found late because the clinical observation and the reporting system and the testing is wrong. The In some farms, the workers cannot do the clinical observation right and report the abnormal cases as soon as possible is reason one. The reason two is there are more cross-contamination during the removal infected pigs. Because the removal process can lead to some cross contamination. The practice is very important. The reason two. The reason three, after removal, the workers should disinfect the places as soon as possible and completely disinfection to kill the virus completely. The reason three. Reason four is a good organization is on-site is very important. So 2 years ago, I was the CEO of the big pig production company. As I when there are some when have cases, I will go to the farms and stay in the farms and organize operation practice and operation. The good organization on site is very important. I think is normal reasons. Thanks.
Thank you for that answers to the last questions that we have. So while you're there also, I would like to ask for some final words from you, Dr. Raymond Q, that you want to share to our participants.
Okay. And
Okay, since you're already there, do you have any final words that you want to share to us this afternoon? Your conclusions on your presentation? Okay, I'll get back to you in a while. Let me call on Dr. Abe Villanueva from SGS. Hi, Doc Abe.
Um,
What's your final words? There's a lot of questions. We'll be sending them to you, and we will post the answers on our website.
Thank you so much, Doc Etens po, no? First of all, thank you so much to the Philippine College of Swine Practitioners, no, for the opportunity given to us today, and to all the Filipino farmers here with us as well. Mobility is threat to biosecurity. The key to changing behaviors and practices lies in people's perceptions of the levels of risk. It's up to us on how we can change our own and might as well as others, people, perceptions for the better. Thank you so much, Doc.
Thank you, Dr. Villanueva, for those kind words. So next, let me call on Dr. Canoy. Please share your final words or words of wisdom.
Okay, thank you. Uh, Most of us are hurt because of the ASF. Now it is the best time to do the planning and the execution in our farm. If we do it before, then today we can innovate, we can improve, we can focus, because that is what we need now. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kanoy, for that. Let me call on Dr. Ganon. Yes. Would you like to share any of your words of wisdom or parting words for this afternoon?
Yes, and I'd like to echo the thanks to the Philippine College of Swine Practitioners for hosting this whole seminar. I think it's been really exciting to share what technologies are available. And as one of my fellow speakers said in this session, if we can't measure it, we can't manage it. And I think this is a good opportunity to show what technologies are available in our industry and are being developed and how they will become part of the routine. And so as much as we have to look at what we're doing now, and that's what's making us money, we also have to be mindful of what's happening in the future and how we can embrace those technologies. The precision livestock farming, next generation sequencing, many of the technologies, and it's only by sharing it in these forums that people can sort of start to see the future and how we can become effective and sustainable pig producers. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Ganon. The future really looks exciting with all these technologies at hand. And I can't wait for our industry to bounce back. So thank you for that. Let me call on Dr. Hong Lin for your final words.
Sure thing. First of all, again, just echoing the great thanks to the Philippine College of Swine Practitioners for organizing this great event and the invite. I would just like to say that we do believe that the world will be different after African swine fever and after COVID-19. So let's take this chance to use technology to reorganize our farming systems, to not just work harder, but work smarter and gain the efficiencies needed to survive in the coming world. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Yeah, work smarter. That's right. Thank you, Dr. Lin. And last but not the least, let me go back to Dr. Raymond Q for your final words.
Thank you. Thank you. I have the opportunity to share my experience with you, and I hope the information is have some valuable for you. If you have more questions, you can contact with Elanco, and I can send me the email. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Raymond. We would like to thank our dear speakers for your time and knowledge that you have shared with us this afternoon. To summarize all these talks, it was really exciting. It's something engaging as well. We got a lot of questions. So let me start with our topic number one. Dr. Raymond Q echoed their experiences in China, to which the Philippines can really learn from. Learnings we can use beyond this ASF. He enumerated granularly the factors to consider and practicable strategies to implement to be successful under ASF while preparing our farms for any future disease. Key takeaways in preparing for the future challenges: building the team, developing the right protocol, and executions for results. Thank you for that, Dr. Q. Speaker number two, Dr. Villanueva from SGS, started by providing us an overview of the importance of assessing risk for disease to enter the farms. He zoomed in on this risk and dissected each by providing diagnostic tools to identify the risk and ultimately mitigate disease entry. Key takeaways in preparing for the future challenges: audit, investigate, measure risk using approved diagnostic tools, document, and last but not the least, take actions. Thank you for that, Dr. Abe. Our third speaker from SEVA, Dr. Kanoy, kicked off by showing how biosecurity play in the overall disease control strategy and how managing well the pig flow can significantly contribute not only in disease control, but most especially in optimizing production. He then narrowed into the specific of pig flow, such as the breeding flow, providing solutions like batch management, all in, all out, by navigating with us through the science behind the solutions. as well as the step-by-step procedure in implementing this in our farms. Key takeaways in preparing for the future challenges: understanding the science before the implementation of any procedure, especially in managing peak flow, can really help the operations both in the disease management and optimizing performance. Thank you for that, Dr. Kanoy. Speaker number 4 from Biomin, Dr. Gannon brought us back to one of the most basics in our disease control strategies, that is understanding how antimicrobial works. He steered us through on the enduring saga between the pathogen and the host interaction, specifically in the gut. He furthered this by zooming in on next generation sequencing as a tool in monitoring resistance and by enumerating how feeding specific additives can help support improve the gut microbiome. Key takeaways in this presentation: in order for us to prepare for the future challenges, we have to understand the host and pathogen interaction, especially in the gut, through monitoring the resistance and managing feed strategy that can help us better prepare for a larger problem, that is the antimicrobial resistance. Those are really exciting topics this afternoon. And last but not the least, from MSD, Dr. Hong Lin opened up the topic with an existential question: how does the future look for swine farms? And where we, the human and the veterinarian, fit in that envisioned future. He then pictured a future where precision and management will be the norm through the use of different technologies and innovations available, such as RFID, sensors, and cameras. He elaborated on how these technologies can be utilized in disease diagnosis, animal welfare monitoring, and many more. Key takeaways for this presentation: in order for us to prepare for the future challenges, the future can be bright for the swine farm, and we can ensure this by being precise in our actions, by using currently available technologies to better improve our capabilities in monitoring performances, diagnosis, and animal welfare. Thank you for that, dear speakers. And again, all those questions that were not raised today will be answered, and I think it will be sent to you. And then your answers will be posted in our website. So having this hybrid of convention, we get to reach to a lot of audience and letting them hear straight from the experts in the comforts of their home or office. This is the best part of having this webinar. We get to understand and learn straight from the experts.